Honeni Elohim, Honeni Elohim, Kehasdeha, Krov Rekameka Meke Feshai, Hashiva Lasason, Isheha, Hasheva Lasason. Days have turned into months, months into years, and after more than 300 years, Yosef and his salvation of Mizraim have been all but forgotten. The cries and prayers of the Israelites now turn to the Holy One and his throne. Honeni Elohim.
Amen.
Hey. All right, man.
Hey.
So we're
home,
starting,
everybody.
We're starting with what, chapter 7 tonight?
Chapter 7,
right?
man.
Can you believe it? We're flying through. We're like halfway through the series, man.
I tell you what, and people are excited, man. Have you been watching the chat? It's pretty exciting, man.
I see that there's people that have been waiting. I didn't realize that I had gone, 5, almost 10 minutes over here. I see some familiar names. I see a couple names that I don't recognize. We got Andy Arc Builders in. We got Kelly Joe, Crystal. Okay. All right, man. Okay, so hopefully everybody listening in has caught up with the last two. Okay, so this is number 3. It's blurring for me, Jeff.
Oh,
I'm studying Exodus like crazy every night for weeks on end now, and it's I can't even keep up with what number's what anymore.
Well, tonight it gets interesting tonight. I mean, we start getting into the area where we have a lot of different views, a lot of different moving pieces going on, a lot. So we want to just tell the viewers here that we're going to be presenting a lot of different information. Some of it you may have heard, some of you may have not heard. Some of it may be a little different than what you've heard. So a bunch of different spins on some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. And it's designed to really get you thinking on what is actually going on. What is Yah really doing here in the land of Egypt? So I'm excited about tonight. This is some good stuff.
Yeah. What are we supposed to view on Moses's view, the Israelites' view, the Pharaoh's view, the Egyptians' view, Yah's perspective, how it applied then, how it applies to us now, and how it applies for the future? I mean, there's so many things to be thinking about and having going through the mind, as we study these 14 chapters. There's a lot, Jeff.
Well, Paul said, Brother Shell said, this was all of these things were written down. It doesn't mean they're fabrication, doesn't mean they're fairy tales or myths or stories, but these were actual events that happened. But he said all of these things were written down for our benefit. And so as we're going through this tonight, guys, and we're talking about all these different things, kind of keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. What is Yah trying to tell you? Us, me, right? Us, I think that's the plural of and try to figure out what Yah is trying to really speak to our hearts about. Because again, we're trying to get everybody ready for Pesach, Passover. We're trying to get you prepared for that and get you in that mindset. And man, this is an incredible journey right here. I'm excited, brother. Let's I don't know.
Yeah, I'm ready to go too, man. It's about to get intense. But hey, real quick, since I forgot, my wife brought it up today. My daughter and I she wanted to do some color time after we did some book reading today and stuff. I was trying to split up study time and family time so I spend enough time in both. And I said, what do you want to color? Because usually she wants us both to try to do the same image, so we get the 2 different takes on the same thing.
Yeah.
And I go, what do you want to color tonight? And she goes, whatever you're doing your video on tonight. So then I had to go over what I'm doing the video with her tonight, right? So then we're both doing all the images of the gnats and the flies and the lice and then the frogs and the water turning to blood and all that stuff. And you got the staff and whatnot. And my wife says, you haven't brought up people having their youngins do crafts and how many videos, right? And she was like, this would have been a really good series for that. And I thought, yeah, we missed the boat on that. And then I thought about it some more and I said, no, we didn't miss the boat on that. The first 2 videos, there's only 1 or 2 things I could have suggested. But right now, tonight would be the time to start mentioning that. Yeah. So anybody who's listening who has children, and we're not going to be, what's the word? We're not going to discredit, we're not going to be ageist here, right? So if you want to join into whatever, or if your children are, not necessarily what others would call a child, but especially for those who do have children, young children. whether they're listening in or not, because this study is probably more geared towards adults and people who want to study scripture and things like that. But if you've got children in the house, we're going to go ahead and throw it out there tonight, moving forward for the rest of this series. We're going to ask that you start promoting the idea of doing some crafts based on the first 14 chapters of Exodus. So however you want to see fit in your household on that. But if you do these things, we would like you guys to send us pictures, whether it's through Facebook or however you can get it to us. And if you do that at the end of the series, I will showcase with permission. If you send it to us, I'm going to assume, unless you say otherwise, don't show this picture, then I won't do that. But I mean, from ages 3 to 6 of just coloring things and making maybe little origami frogs and things, right? To maybe you guys go and make your own walking staffs and you put the name of your family tribe with the leader on it and things like that. I mean, however you guys want to do it, if you do some crafts to build the family activity and to encourage talking about Passover and the Exodus and things in your household, we ask that not only you do this, but that you share it with us, and we'll put it in the videos. And maybe we'll even somehow figure out how to connect that to the giveaway. I don't know yet.
Hey, listen, just a thought too. There's some folks that have all their kids are grown and all that good stuff like that, or maybe they don't have kids. You okay with opening this up to the kid at heart, and maybe they want to do some kind of art? I'm nudging my wife, Miranda. Maybe she wants to do a painting or something like that. Maybe Yah puts on her heart. So anyway, just some things like that. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we've had some submissions before of some individuals that were pretty talented. And, I'm thinking for those who can really draw, maybe think about doing one of those collage drawings where you have like all the 10 plays going on, or a little bit and piece, kind of like how the thumbnail art that my wife does for these videos tries to get a little element of each. Some big piece of like that. That'd be pretty cool. But anything like that. I thought the walking staff idea was kind of cool. The walking stick, the little origami things. Anything you guys feel like doing. If you do it, send it to us. Get it to us somehow. Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and let us know, and we'll do a little thing of that at the very end of the whole series.
Yeah, that's
exciting. I thought I'd get that out before we move forward here. I think we're gonna move a little slower tonight, Jeff. I don't know about you, but I don't have as many notes for tonight, but last
night I felt like we were in a race.
I know it, Jeff. I know you're sitting there going, man, he is just pushing and rushing. I know it, Jeff. We both have our things, and I was. And I don't necessarily know that I'm going to be pushing and rushing tonight. I think tonight's a little bit
we're doing easier. 2 chapters tonight, right? Just 2.
Right. But there's a lot of heaviness. So we're going to be talking about the harder things. We're also going to be talking about Egyptian deities and things.
Yep.
And you and I both have some stuff to bring to the table on that. So if you're ready to go, let's just open it up at Exodus 7.
Yeah, let's go, man. I'm good for that.
Okay, so Exodus 7, starting with verse 1. And Yahovah said to Moshe, "See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aharon thy brother shall be thy prophet." Okay, thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aharon thy brother shall speak unto the Pharaoh. Right, so we've talked about this before. It's going directly from Yah to Moshe, Moshe to Aaron, Aaron to the Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of its land. So that whole imagery of it being Moses' staff and the scene coming up.
Yep.
We'll be discussing that, right? The Moses being constantly one saying, "Let my people go." If we look at the verses here, it says that Yah's telling Moshe, Moshe is telling Aaron, and Aaron's speaking forward. Okay, so then we have that verse again. "I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in all the land of Egypt." Should we stop and discuss that? Should we start right there?
Let's go ahead and start there. I mean, because that's a point of contention. A lot of people are like, well, was it Pharaoh hardening his heart? Was it God, maneuvering his will? Because we're supposed to have free will, right? So was God overtaking Pharaoh's will? So there's a lot of questions on that. Where do you line up on that? This is brother. You're right.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fine. You can do that, Jeff. I actually, this is a question I enjoy answering.
Yeah.
And people live or other ways may not always agree, but this is my perspective. This is thus thinketh Ian, right?
Thus thinketh Ian. All right.
So you get asked, because I've hinted before in the last video and possibly even in the first video that there's some verses that says that Yah will harden Pharaoh's heart, and then you've got verses that says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart.
Right.
So when I get asked, was it Pharaoh hardening his own heart or was it Yah? I say yes. I say it was both. But when we start looking at the actual breaking down of the Hebrew, and I'm not a Hebrew expert, so I turn to the Hebrew experts and then I share what they tell me from what I can discern on whether or not it seems that they're accurate. from what I can tell, when you look at the actual Hebrew phrasing there, where it says that Yah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, which isn't in every verse that talks about this, it's certain verses, but in those certain verses, if you break it down to the Hebrew, apparently the Hebrew experts say that it actually says that Yah allows his heart to be hardened. So that is not the same thing as Yah controlling it. Now, you've got sections of scripture here to consider, right? What is it, like Romans 9? And then I would connect that with, I think, Jeremiah 18. I think I have that in my notes somewhere. I was going to do it for the last video. But in Romans 9, you have that whole...
I'm super glad that you brought that out about it. It's a permissive thing that's going on. And because that is exactly what's going on in the Hebrew. I thought I was going to get you with a zinger there, but I didn't. So
that's why you turned the table. See, anybody who's new to the show or hasn't watched this enough, a nice little thing to pay attention to is Jeff and I don't share notes. We rarely tell each other what we're bringing into the video. We just tell each other what chapters we're going to discuss, and then we both try to throw the other one off. Saying, "Hey, I got a revelation that I think is going to throw you off," and then we like to try to see if we can catch the other one.
And how many times, brother, do each one of us just pop in with what we with the other one already? That's pretty good. But it is a permissive form of hardening the heart. And so what I see there, brother, is that I see that they have Yah allows these things to come around, and I think he really just kind of he allows this this hardening to go on. Just like we can pray and ask the Father to, well, I pray that you get through to someone's heart. We can pray things like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that God is going to go and override their will. He will make the circumstances around that person's life favorable. Can we say favorable to being to a certain direction? One of the prayers of the aeronautic blessing is that he will cause his face to shine upon us, and that word there is where we get it's talk about his favor coming upon us, and so it's an area of that Yah puts around us that we have the ability to come in and be blessed. So here the same thing, Father is giving him some, I guess, favor, if you will, towards a hard heart, and so I think that's really good. So.
Yeah. So this is what I'm seeing. Okay, so let's go to Romans 9. Since we're going to go slower tonight, I think you're going to be more comfortable, Jeff. So let's go to Romans 9 real quick, because this is a portion of scripture that is often misunderstood and argued about and interpreted and understood in different ways. So instead of just simply hinting at it, let's actually look at it for 2 seconds here. Okay, so we look at Romans 9. You go about halfway down, and you look at, they've got, as it is written, Jacob I've loved, Esau I've hated, right? What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid. For he say to Moshe, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then is it not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy? For the scripture says unto Pharaoh, even of the same purpose I have raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. So you have a purpose there of all the nations, and that's something I wanted to get into a little bit later on tonight. But moving forward, therefore hath he have mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will hardeneth, right? And then Paul goes on to say, thou wilt say unto me, why do you find yet fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that replies against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why have you made me thus? Has not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another to dishonor? What if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had afore prepared unto glory? Okay, and then he goes on talking about the Jew and the Gentile and things like that. So when you look at just those verses, right, there's a couple different ways to take this. You get the apathetic Calvinistic view, and they're like, see, it's preordained. There's nothing you can do about it. Right. And with that apathetic mindset, and I use the word apathy there for a reason, it becomes this whole understanding of why even bother. It's just meant about the predestined, aforetime, predetermined elect. Why even bother trying to save other souls? Why even bother trying to preach to anybody? And that's why often with the Calvinists, they have such a deterministic mindset that they're not worried about trying to reach anybody, because they figure whoever's God already knows who it is. And I'm not disagreeing that Yah knows, but the understanding that there's no point to reach. So they add that here. So I find it interesting that there's a segue here. Has not the potter power over the clay of the same to make lump of one vessel to honor and another to dishonor? So when you're reading this text and you read just that portion of scripture, right, which we tend to call that cherry picking, when you just pick that one section, whether it's one verse or a section, and you ignore the rest of the Bible, right? Now, we've been warned about Paul's writings, that they're hard to understand, that they're often misunderstood, and they're often twisted in things, right? Was it 2 Peter that says that?
Peter says that,
Yeah. So we get warned about this, right? And churchianity tends to focus so much on Paul and not the scriptures that Paul was reading, that they don't even care to try to look at it through Paul's lens. They're looking at it through this preconceived lens that's already been given to them by their pastor, who's already gotten it from Bible college, who got it from the seminaries, from people before him, and it's been this passing down of a lens, right? But that potter over the clay, right? This is something that I've talked about in videos here at Take on the World TV with Jeremiah Dirt, as well as Vicky Joy. And for anybody who's not familiar with those videos, we went back to Jeremiah 18, where you have Jeremiah being told by Yah to go to the potter's house and to watch the potter and the potter wheel, which is going to come up again later on tonight, Jeff.
Amen.
Right?
That's right.
Right. So it's funny how it's been coming up a couple times in this show, in the first episode, and now again in the third. But Jeremiah goes and he watches, and this guy's making pottery, and Yah's telling him, don't you know that if he makes an error, he can fix it? It's up to the potter, you know, if the vessel is allowing him to do so. And he compares that to Israel with the father, saying, look, the father can fix this if you repent. Now, when Vicky Joy and I were talking about this, she said, don't you know it's so crazy we're talking about this? Because I hadn't prepared her either. She said, I just got off the phone with my friend who for 3 hours told me everything there is about pottery. And I was like, you know, she loves her friend, but she was like, oh my gosh, I don't care about pottery that much, right?
Right.
And we're doing the video, and she's like, oh my gosh, though, this applies. She goes, she told me you can always fix the pottery as long as it's centered. If it is no longer centered, then you cannot fix it. Right. So then when you start to apply that as a vessel who's trying to be shaped by the potter, the one, so you do have the control of the father, but you also have the partnering up of the vessel itself needing to be centered. If it's not choosing to be centered, we do see that repentance is within our will. We are given that possibility. Right? We have that understanding. One of the things I used to do in street preaching and in evangelism and in apologetics, I'd come head to head with a lot of atheists, and I wouldn't come head to head to argue, but try to reach them. And they'd say, you know, if your God's so loving and so wonderful, why did he let man fall? Why is there sin? Why is there all this evil stuff? And then they start bringing up straw man arguments that have nothing to do with why they're actually angry at God, right? Because it's a personal thing, not the starving kid in Kenya that's bothering them. They have personal anger issues, and they don't want to bring that up, because then they get vulnerable and they get upset, and they don't want to think about those things.
Especially if you give them an answer to why they're upset, then they don't get that. I'll throw in another thing. Besides being centered, the clay also has to still be wet. If that clay dries out, you cannot do anything with it. So it still has to be wet. Now, I'm not talking about just like soaking wet, but there still has to be that washing of the word that goes on with that, and that's what helps the Father form us. So not only do we have to be centered, but we still have to allow that word to wash down upon us, and
water and spirit.
Well, that helps us to be malleable, right? That helps us to be malleable, because when we get to that place where we think that we know everything, gosh, that's when we start to get dry. That's when we start to get burnt out, if you will. So there's areas of that. People always talk about that. Jeff, how can I keep from being burned out? Well, keep the washing of the word on, in that sense, in the clay. But if you're talking about fire, how do we keep fire going on? You have to keep adding logs to the fire, right? And so what is that? I look at that as service. When the priest would have their service about the tabernacle and stuff, how did they keep the fires going? Was it just supernatural? No, they had to go keep putting logs on the fire. That was part of their priestly service, was to keep putting wood on the fire. And so I'll tell people all the time, if you feel like you're getting burned out, that's because you have stopped putting logs on the fire, and you've been trying to go off of yesterday's fire instead of what have you put on the fire? What have you put on today in your fire? So that's just a little tidbit there. Yeah.
No, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So my answer to the atheist, right? Yeah. God is love. God is true love. God desires love. Yeah. You can't receive love unless there is an option. You have to be able to choose to love the other. Otherwise, it's not an option. It's forced, right? So thus the allowing of the fall of man. Thus there was an option even when man hadn't fallen. There was that option. He told them not to do it, but the option was still there.
Yeah.
Then the option was chosen. So if you can choose love as an option, then that means that there's more than one option. Otherwise, it's not an option. So you have to have more than one option. So if you have something as an option other than love, then it would have to be literally that, something other than love, something evil, something not holy, something not pure, something that is not love. So there's purposes and reasons behind this is what I'm getting at. But as it seems to me, when you look at the context of all of the scriptures, when it talks about, yes, you have the preordained verses, but you also have the, choose to repent you this day.
Yeah.
You can't choose one of those verses and ignore the other and think you have a whole biblical view. You have to consider all these verses, and then you have to either say, okay, I'm picking the ones that seem right to me, and I'm going to kick out the others. I'm going to say those are errors. You can either choose that, which, a lot of people do, but think about what's being done and said there.
Yeah, with the press, when you start trying to rip scripture out, man, you're doing a. Miranda and I talk about this quite often. Predestination. We talk about, how Yah lives outside of time, so He can see every choice that we make, positive or negative, in everything, and how that affects everything, and yet He still sees it what we're doing at the end, and that's a tough thing to kind of wrap your head around. Mm-hmm. Every choice, everything that we've gone on in our life, and then we tack on this part of Scripture here. God hardening Pharaoh's heart, or allowing his heart to be hardened, or all of these things. So how does that play in? And
right, well, you're having that choosing. You have that verse there that shows that Yah was doing it for the glorification and the honor of Yah, which He has every right to do. Right. So you get a couple different ways of looking at this. You can say, okay, it seems that Yah chose Pharaoh to be that bad guy to glorify God. Which, if that was the case, I don't believe that that's what's being said here. But if that was the case, who are we to say otherwise? Who are we to say what Yah can and can't do, what is righteous, what is not righteous, what is just, what is not just? We can't. We cannot compare to the king on the throne. We cannot. Whatever He decides, we know that He has what's best. And Jeff, I'm going to say something people don't like when I say this. Yeah. But even if Yah wasn't, which obviously He is pure, holy, 100% righteous, but let's say He wasn't, okay? Yeah. Dangerous hypothetical, but this is just for a hypothetical. Even if He wasn't, He's still the God.
Yeah.
So I mean, if anything, we should be appreciative that even though we don't always fully comprehend, that He is 100% love, pure, and holy. Because if He wasn't, He would still be God, and there's nothing you can do about that. There's no entity that can then, So I mean, we got the best of all the best here. He is the one that's in charge, and He's in love and holy and pure. Okay, so I would say, much like how. Was it Kelly or was it Karen? It was Karen. The word harden there is actually talking about strengthening. So you have that whole analogy of like clay or mud versus wax, right? You put them under heat and they have two different things. One gets stronger and harder, and then the other one melts, right? Yeah. So you have this choice, this option, right? And remember back to what we talked about last night. The first initial request wasn't even to let them all go. It was requesting a 3 days journey for a sacrifice and a feast, because there's verses talking about both. So both of them were being part of the request. It was a 3 days journey. We weren't given a time period of how long they'd be gone in total, but that was the initial request. So right away, Yah was testing Pharaoh's heart, right? And He knew which way it was going to go, but He's still giving him the option, right, to choose which way you're going to go with it.
Yeah. Sometimes when we've talked about predestination, stuff like this, I look at some people call it Lucifer, Hillel, Enlil, Hasatan. When Yah made him, when He created him, he made him perfect in beauty, perfect in wisdom. He was it, man. But at the same time, even before He made him, Yah already knew that he was going to fall, right? Yeah. Did that shock God? Did that shock Him? Like, oh, wow, what did I just do? None of that shocked Him. And I think that we need to get in our understanding is that, where the Scripture says that God creates evil, right? Well, some people have a hard time with that. But like you're saying, if He's created the capacity for free will, and He's created the capacity to choose His will, right, which would be good, And then you have the free will capacity to choose not to do his will. That would be unrighteousness, evil. And you're like, well, why can't I choose the other way and not be, well, you're not God. And just like you're saying here, even no matter how his way is, he is still almighty. He is El Shaddai. He is the God of spirits. He is the El Elyon, the God of gods. And we need to respect that. And so many times we try to think that we are more just than he is, because we're like, I wouldn't do it like this. Well, you don't have all the information. You don't see outside of time. You don't see all the little things, all the little nuances that are going on. And that is super prideful of you. This little tiny speck of nothing, right? If we can just say that, compared to Yah. And you think that you're more righteous, you're more able to show justice and mercy and love than he is. Come on. Let the air out of your bag there. So
yeah. Well, I think a lot of times it's a subconscious thing. They're not actually realizing that is their mindset. It's just a simple of like, well, that can't be. That's an error, or you get the whole, oh, that was him back in the day, right?
That's
you get the churchianity. I had a Bible study. I want to move on to the next verses here, but real quick, I had a Bible study once, Jeff, and this was before I realized the Torah was not done away with, even though I was eating clean, keeping feasts. Observing Shabbat, a lot of the main things that TO people identify as being how Torah applies to them today. I was doing those things, but I still thought Torah was done away with. And I was doing those things because Yah was telling me to do those things. And I went to a Bible study, and we were doing an Acts 5. Did I tell you about this? An Acts 5 study? They told us we were doing a Bible study. I brought my Bible. My wife brought her Bible. We each had a Bible and a notebook and a pen, and we were the only ones with our Bibles at this study group that we were told was a Bible study group. And instead of having Bibles, they actually had a book that they were studying, which they should have just called it a book club. And I told them that, not in a mean way, but at the end of it, I said, if you had told me it was a book club, I would have tried to get the book, not. I thought this was a Bible study, But they succinctly wrapped up Acts 5 in not even 10 minutes, and they said, man, I'm just so glad that was Yah of the Old Testament and not now.
Right.
And I stopped and I looked at them, and it was one of those moments that gears were starting to click for me in certain things. And I said, but this is Acts 5. And they said, yeah. And I said, yeah, this is Acts 5. I don't know about your Bible, but if you're going to split first and second part, this is after the split,
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with Chad Schaefer about that. I was like, oh my goodness, anytime anybody sees anything in churchianity that doesn't fit their preconceived notion of who Yah is in this new covenant, they just consider that the old thing. You start showing them Paul doing Torah sacrifices, not for sin atonement, but for other reasons, according to the Torah. Oh, well, he just hadn't got out of the system yet. Well, then why didn't Scripture tell us that?
He was faking it. He was lying to him to get off his back. Come on, that's what they say, man.
Okay. Don't get me started, Jeff. Let's move forward. Let's move forward.
That rabbit. Let's go on. There we go.
Don't get me going here. We'll be stuck all night talking about if the Torah is done away with or not.
There we go.
Okay, so I think we covered overall the idea of this understanding that there's a couple different views of seeing it, whether you believe that Yah was purposely fixating his heart to become evil so that he can use it for glorification, or where I think you sit with me on this, that Yah was allowing it to happen and he knew it was going to happen and he had this planned, but he still gave him the option to go either way. So Pharaoh,
can I throw one more thing in there with that? Where we see with King Ahab, and I think it's in 1 Kings, where we see King Ahab, and there's some things going on with him, and God's talking to his council. We're probably going to get into some of that tonight. God's talking to his council, or former council members in this case, but talking to his council, and he says, hey, any ideas, guys? That's Jeff Brand's loose translation. And there's a lying spirit that raises his hand and said, look, I can go call some lies to go around him. I'm wondering, in conjunction with this, allowing his heart to be hardened or strengthened to a certain position, does he allow some of these lying spirits or some of these prideful spirits or some of these different things to encapsulate around him to help kind of move him in a different direction? So I just wanted to throw that out there because sometimes we think everything is just, I don't know, a certain way, but God, listen, there is a supernatural, there's a spirit world that we typically don't think of. That is very prevalent. Yeshua said that the things that are unseen are more real than the things that are seen. So we got to think of that. So amen. All right, brother.
Okay, so moving on to where we're at, 7:4 here. But Pharaoh shall not hearken to you, right? Again, and this is not the first time. Right? We've mentioned
Over
this
and
how
over.
many times, Jeff,
Yeah, I
that
think
Yah is
5
making it
times.
clear to Moshe
Yeah.
over and over again. We're talking back at the Mount, you
Yep.
know, and he's telling them all throughout the process what's going to happen. And then every time it doesn't go how Moshe was hoping, he's like, what's going on? Which is why we're in chapter 7 here. Moshe said in the last chapter, why are things getting worse? So the Pharaoh shall not hearken to you, that I may lay my hand upon Mitzrayim, Egypt, and bring forth mine armies.
Right.
Okay. And my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. Okay. So you've got my armies, my people, my children of Israel. There's some interesting things there. And the Egyptians shall know, right? So we see that some of this is for the Egyptians, shall know that I am Yahovah, when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt, Mizraim, and bring out the children of Israel from among them. So we're going to see here that it doesn't say throughout the process, but the Egyptians will know once it's all said and done. Once the children are once Israel is fully, completely out of Mizraim, out of Egypt, then the Egyptians will know. You see?
I think it's interesting that the children of Israel believed after they heard the word. All right, they heard the word spoken by Aharon, and they also after the signs that Aharon did according to the word of Moses and according to the word of Yah. Yah told Moses, Moses told Aharon, and then boom, that they go through this. That's when they believed. That's when they worshipped, and then we see all the way for I think chapter 6 and 7. They're going before Pharaoh and not doing the same process which Yah told them to do. Do the word and do the signs and wonders, and then bam, things are going to happen. But you know what? I already know it's not going to happen. Why? Because they didn't follow the pattern. Here we go. We're still in the same deal, and God's telling them go out and do the signs and wonders, and that's where we're finally getting to here is when Moses and Aaron get ready to verse 6. I'm excited about verse 6, but go ahead.
Moshe and Aharon did as Yahovah commanded them, so did they. Yeah, and you're right. And we talked about this last video, and I think I don't know if we talked about that in the first video or not, but talking about how that first time that they came before the Pharaoh, like you said, they weren't doing the signs, and you and I are both thinking this is something that I wasn't taught growing up. This wasn't something that I was even really recognizing until this study the past couple of weeks. I'm starting to look at it and I go, oh my goodness, they didn't do any of the signs the first time they came before the Pharaoh. You know, and we talked about that a lot last video. For anybody who wants to hear that more in depth, go check it out. But this verse kind of seals the deal, doesn't it? They did as Yahovah commanded them, which you don't see being said before this verse.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of emphasizes that point that we had discussed last video. So Moshe was 80 years old. That's 80, right? 4 sets of 20. And Aharon, being the older brother, was 83, so 83, when they spoke to Pharaoh. So again, we have another timing clue, right? So we see, according to Acts 7, Moshe was 40 when he killed the Egyptian and fled to Midian. We don't know how long it took him to get to Midian. We don't know how long before he had children in Midian. We don't know how old his children were when he had to do the emergency circumcision that we talked about yesterday.
Right.
Or was that no, that was yesterday, right? Yeah. Jeff, 4. It's all blurring. It's all blurring, Jeff. Yeah. But so we've got that.
Chapter 5.
We're finishing that second set of the 40, moving forward into the third set, right? We talked about how Moshe's life can be broken up into 3 sections of 40. Real quick, fun little quote here from. Well, maybe it's not a perfect quote. Maybe I should say what is the word when you quote, but it's not perfectly worded.
Maybe a
paraphrase. Yeah, paraphrase. That is. Okay, so Moody, right? I don't know how you feel about Moody, but when I went to Nazarene Bible College, Moody was one of the ones that they constantly were shoving down our throats, and some of this stuff was good. So I'm not
good stuff.
I'm not saying it's negative, but anyway, so Moody said, Moshe's life can be broken up into 3 sections of 40. He said 40 years Moses thought he was somebody. He said the second set, 40 years, Moses went back into the back of the desert and thought he was nobody. The last set of 40 years, Moses got to see what Yah can do with nobody. So you get to see, the different thing. I thought that was a neat little quote to bring up before we keep trucking through here.
Yeah, another thing to bring up is the age of Moses and Aharon and even Miriam. Comparatively, the lifespan during this time was about 30 or 40 years old. So you're already seeing the hand of Yah on these people. I mean, gosh, we have pharaohs that are only living to be in their 40s.
Yeah,
So this is that's something
true.
else to really kind of grab a hold of here, is that not only are the children of Israel and the Egyptians seeing these people that should be technically dead. I mean, they're going to be revered just because of their age. So I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but that's something else. Gosh, they're twice as old right now that most people when they die. So they're already going to have some perception about them. And so I kind of think, not talking with Pharaoh, but the Egyptians,
Right.
they're seeing Moshe and Aharon and sometimes even Miriam go up and talk to Pharaoh and talk to, they're seeing them around town and stuff. Just that in itself is showing some of Yah's power, because people during this time are not living that long. So I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but that's another little tidbit.
A little bit. I'm glad you brought it up, though, because that's not something I was going to bring up. But we know that not only was Aharon older than Moshe, but so was Miriam.
Yeah.
I mean, call back to the first video. She's the one that stood by watching the basket that was, I believe, sitting still in the reeds and not floating down.
That.
Yeah. Anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, that's the first video.
You've hooked me on that. I'm there now. That's some good stuff.
Okay, so moving forward, we have Moshe 80, Aharon 83, something to picture. And maybe they don't look how we see 80 and 83 now. Sure. But this is also after the flood. It's not the same as before the flood, how 80 and 83 would have looked. So we need to bring it in on that pendulum. They didn't look like they were in their 20s, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't using canes to walk in, obviously, but anyhow, so Yahovah spoke unto Moshe and unto Aharon, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak to you, saying, show a miracle for you, right? So it says when Pharaoh asks for a miracle, which is interesting, right? Because a lot of people don't think about that either.
Here, I just like to point this out. This is a word of knowledge. I'll always like to pop out where we see some of the gifts of the Spirit operating in what we consider the Old Testament or the Tanakh. This is a word of knowledge that Yah is giving to Moshe and Aaron, that, hey, he's going to ask you this. And when he does, this is what you do. This is a classic example of a word of knowledge. Carry on, bro. I just want to throw that out.
Okay, so when the Pharaoh speaks unto you, saying, show him a miracle, I out of all the Exodus movies, and I watched one last night.
Yeah. Which one did you watch?
Okay, so I watched one of the Hollywood ones, which was better than what I thought, but it was still was
it the newest one, the Gods of Men, or Gods of Egypt, or something like that?
Gods and Kings. Christian Bale. I had never seen it before.
He's walking around. He looks like he's just like on drugs or something, just hearing God.
No. Well, they had the little boy being the messenger of Yah, and I think that was one of the most things that really bothered me. On top of the fact that he wasn't going in and out of the Pharaoh's court, making these and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Not so much that movie, but the atheistic and secular viewpoint, because we need to attack those things. We need to show what is being said and why that is not the case. But out of all those Exodus movies, Jeff, do you ever remember it starting out with scene one where they finally do the showdown, which they usually do the first time? They don't do it as a second visit, right? And we talked about that already last video. But not only do they not do it a second visit, but when have you ever seen the Pharaoh demand a miracle? Do you ever remember that?
Never.
I don't think they've ever done that.
That's a big deal too. Yeah.
But here we see that the Pharaoh's going to request it. Again, might not have been the case had they done the commands first time go.
Well, if you look at it like this, if we go back to chapter 7, right, or 6,
we're in 7. Yeah.
If you go back to chapter 6, when they do come to him at first, he's like, well, who is this Yehovah that I should listen to? Who is this God? And so now
that would have been their time to do it.
That'd been the time to do it right then, right? Yeah.
So
they're coming back now, and there's and Pharaoh's like, okay, guys, this is round 2. You didn't like this, the bricks without straw thing. Show me a miracle.
Yeah.
Prove to me that this is not some kind of little God that you bought at the Dollar Tree, right? That shakes or smells good when you hang him from your rearview mirror or something like that. So show me some stuff with this God. I think he is trying to, Pharaoh has been raised all of his life that his gods are the gods, right? He believes that he is the son of Ra. He is Horus incarnate. I mean, we're going to get into all this stuff here in just a second, but this is him saying, okay, you say you've got a God, show me. He's from, actually, I don't know if you knew this, but Pharaoh was from Missouri. And if you knew that, he's from the Show Me state. I'm just kidding. So he's from the Show Me state. So he's saying, show me this miracle if you really have a God. So that's kind of where we're at there.
Okay,
yeah.
So when Pharaoh requests the miracle, that's when Moshe is to nudge Aaron and say, take your rod. Again, this is Aaron's rod. Again, not what we normally see. Right. And cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. Hold it, Jeff. I know you want to get into it, but just hold it.
I'm not. I'm waiting.
Okay, because we'll get there.
Being patient. Being patient, brother.
The chat tends to be chomping at the bit the past couple of videos too. Are you going to get into this? Are you going to get into this?
Oh yeah,
we're coming there, man.
Hold up.
Just let us get there.
Yeah.
Okay. So Moshe and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh. Okay, so they're going into the court second time, and they did so as Yahovah had commanded. There it is again, Jeff, being reiterated here. Now they're actually doing what they're told to do.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I'm just saying. Okay, so Aharon cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Okay, now we can. It was a verse early, Jeff. I know you were waiting. Okay. So anybody who caught it last video yesterday,
go ahead and read. I was saying go ahead and read down to
13,
12 at the end. Well, you can read to go ahead and read till 13. And we just talk about the whole thing.
Okay. All right, so Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants. See, it's not just Pharaoh. He's got his magicians there. He's got his wise men, his sorcerers, his servants. It's a bit of a crowd. And it is also possible, as we mentioned in the last video, that perhaps Moshe and Aharon have the elders with them. Remember, it says that as Yahovah had commanded. So I would argue for not only just yesterday's video in chapter 6 that we know they were there, but I would say that
for sure.
That this one as well. So we have at least the first two visits. Moving forward, we're going to have to look at the text and see, but I would say at least in these two, we can definitely say the elders were present. So Aharon cast down his rod, not Moshe, before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Mitzrayim, and they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he hearkened not unto them, as Yahovah had said. Okay, so before we get into the stuff that might be new for some people, and for the rest of the chats, like, okay, we already know. Before we get into that, I want to mention some things about the average known common view.
Sure.
Can I do that before we get into the?
Yeah, because I think I have some stuff to say with that. You may hit it, but let's go with that first.
Okay. So here's the thing. First off, my daughter and I didn't go looking for this, Jeff. My daughter and I were watching some shows, and she's got a show that she likes to watch where it's a Christian show. It's a dad and his children, and they go into the wilderness of California, and he's grabbing all kinds of reptiles and lizards and snakes and things. And he, some of them he lets the little ones be with him, and some of them he's like, no, you need to go away. This is not safe,
Right.
And he'll show you how to handle things, but he's talking about each one and what makes them different and their coloration and if they're used to that area and all that stuff, right? So my daughter loves watching survival stuff, nature stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like that stuff and biblical stuff. I don't really let her watch much other than that. And we're watching it, and the guy said something peculiar, Jeff. I didn't know if you're familiar with this, but he said that he was like, now this here is the king cobra of California, blah, blah. And he goes, now a king snake is a snake that eats other snakes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Jeff. He said that the only time you can call a king snake, a king cobra, there's a couple different views, a couple different snakes that are called king whatever. But these are the only snakes that eat other snakes. The other snakes don't do that. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if that dates back to this, if people thought back to Exodus when they saw a snake eating another snake and they said, the snake of the king that eats other snakes. But that's what was going through my head when I was watching this. I was like, I wonder if that's connected, if that's where the etymology for the nomenclature of king cobra comes from, is they saw a snake eating another snake. They realize all the other snakes don't do it. And they say, you know what? The king of kings, his snake ate other snakes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to bring that up. And then real quick, this doesn't really connect to this, but I don't know if you and I will ever do Genesis 3. Maybe we should.
Oh,
but, I was at my work a few weeks ago. There's a guy there who's a snake enthusiast, Jeff. Like he's big into, he goes to reptile things. He's got, I don't know how many snakes. I've heard all the different workers say different numbers, anywhere from 6 to like 40. And I don't know what to believe. I just know he has snakes. Okay. And he wears snake shirts like all the time at work and stuff like that. And from what I understand, he's not a believer. I don't know if he'd consider himself atheistic or agnostic or whatever. But he's one of the few non-believers in my work environment. And one of the guys who likes to talk scripture weird stuff with me all the time pulled him over and he said, "Hey, come here. I want you to tell Ian something." And he goes, "Okay." Because he knows he's about to use a non-believer to argue something scripturally, right?
Right.
And so that my buddy goes, "Okay, tell him about hip bones and snakes." Do you know about this, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course you do. All right. Well, anyways, for the listener.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I don't.
Of course you do, Jeff. Yeah. I'll get you some point tonight. I'm going to get you, man. I'm going to get you. Okay, so because I thought to myself, I said, I wonder if Jeff knows this. When I first heard it, I was like, I got to go to him about this. Yeah. So he goes, there's hip bones in certain snakes. And I said, what? Mm-hmm. And my buddy goes, well, you know, I believe when you look at Genesis 3, it talks about you now have to sliver on your stomach that it used to have limbs. And I said, I agree with that. And then you've got the serpent seed people that are like, oh no, he became a Ken doll. Let's just keep it real PG. He became a Ken doll, right? And I disagree with that. And you and I have discussed that in the Gen 4 thing. And anybody who wants to know about arguments on that, we real quickly touch on like multiple reasons why that should not be considered in our Gen 4 videos. Not going to go into that tonight, but anyways, he said certain snakes have hip bones that are now considered vestigial because they don't have any legs.
Right.
And it's positioned exactly where it would have legs.
It should have been. Yeah.
If it would have had legs. And it's not all snakes, Jeff. It's certain ones, right? And I can't remember if it was all boas or if it was all pythons. Because he told me, he said it's all boas, right? And he said no. And he said it's all constrictors. And he said no, but it's all pythons. Something like that. But anyways, certain snakes actually have hip bones. I thought I'd bring that up since we're talking about serpents and things like that. Okay, Jeff. We can get into.
I've got something right here too. Okay. So we do have there are other opinions of this. Some people are saying these are just sleight of hands, things that are going on with Moses's rod and the magician's rod, or excuse me, Aaron's rod and the Egyptian's rod. They think these are sleight of hands. This is like David Copperfield or David Blaine or somebody like that. These are just tricks. These are parlor tricks. I would argue that these are not parlor tricks that are going on, even with Pharaoh's magicians. I'm going to tell you guys, there is a real supernatural thing that the other side has, and they don't mind showing off their power. They don't mind showing off things. There's whole countries that are massively afraid of voodoo, massively afraid of curses, like in Haiti and different places, Jamaica and different places like this. They have seen the power of the we can call it the dark side or the enemy side, and they respect it. Here we have, I think that we see that Pharaoh is very confident, right? He is confident. Verse 11, then Pharaoh called the wise men and the sorcerers. Then the magicians of Egypt likewise performed. So we have the wise men, right? We have sorcerers, and then we have magicians. There are three classifications that he calls, and each one of these different classifications throws down their rods. So if you look at it, the wise men are like on top. You got the sorcerers, then you have the magicians, or maybe it's the other way around, however you want to do that. But there's three different levels of these people that are into sorcery or into the black arts that Pharaoh has so much confidence in. He's calling the greatest to the least in his eyes, and they're all able to duplicate what, to some degree, what Aaron did when he threw down the rod. And I really felt that that's necessary, because we live in a day and an age when we just discount anything that's supernatural. Yeah. Something supernatural, not only of Yah is going on here, but something supernatural of the enemy is going on. When we look at the, go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish, Jeff.
Yeah. So when we look at, let's kick it up, a few thousand years to the book of Acts, when we see the 7 sons of Sceva going into, they've been watching Paul and different people cast out demons. They're like, man, this is pretty cool. We could probably make a buck off of this, right? That's Jeff Rand's loose translation. They go in, they're like, they're going to cast this demon out. This demon says, Yeshua I know, Paul I know, but who the heck are you? And this one little guy beats the snot out of these 7 priestly sons of Sceva, and not Sceva. It's not Rob Skeba's family tree, but anyway, but they beat him up, and the Bible says they come out bloody and bruised and naked. And so this is one guy supernaturally imbued with demonic power, supernatural demonic power. And we have authority over those things through Messiah and through Yah. But again, there's this image today that none of that exists. That's all fairy tales. But listen, That is a lie. Can we just say that that is a lie? We have a supernatural book. We have a supernatural God that is not on vacation, and we also have a supernatural enemy. And we're going to see some of that tonight with
Right.
what we're going through.
So here's the thing, Jeff. Usually there's two schools of thought on this, right? And you're hitting on the one, and you and I both lean on it being black magic and things like that.
Right.
But I want to be fair to the listener. I know of a few people that are going to be listening in, and I can think of one in particular who's possibly rolling their eyes at us talking about that, and that's okay. We're not going to sit there and need anybody to agree with us on anything. You and I are discussing this, how we see it, what we have to share. It's up to them to chew the meat, spit the bones as they feel they can discern on their relationship with Yah and how it helps their walk in their studies. So you have the two different schools of thought, because we do have records of in Egypt at that time, dating before this, dating after it, no matter what view you have of the timing of Exodus, of the ability to put the snake in a catatonic state, thus making it frozen stiff, tossing it down, and it becoming animate, right? If you knock it out of its catatonic state, right? So there is records of that. So there are those who look to that as their academic support backing of their understanding of saying, look, it's not black magic. This is fake tricks. And maybe they don't think that Yah's version is fake tricks, that Moshe's rod is fake tricks. Because usually if you think the rod of Aharon is a fake trick, then you're throwing the whole Bible out anyhow.
Yeah, you've got other issues.
Your view on this whole thing, at this point, you don't even want to talk about the Reed or Red Sea, however you view it.
Right.
None of that matters, But for the believer who's not comfortable with black magic and sorcery and thinks of this just smoke and mirrors, if you will, David Copperfield on low levels, which you and I might have we might even differ on that a little bit, right? In terms of, is Copperfield's all just smoke and mirrors? But that's beside the point.
Right.
But you do have that. You have that one school of thought that it was just at the very least, that the magicians and things were doing a trick of the hand, sleight of hand.
Let me say something to that too. I don't want to say that there's none of that, none of those type of shenanigans ever going on. We know that the Catholic Church manipulated statues during the Dark Ages to help people give more money to the church. They would be behind the scenes pulling levers, hitting the button, doing things. And so there are shenanigans like that we have documented. But here I really see this is a supernatural showdown. Because these, I don't know, I just.
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. Here's the thing. If it was snakes, right? There's a possibility of the catatonic state, and there is that argument. Could. But now we get to talk about, what if it weren't snakes?
What if they weren't snakes?
Because if it weren't snakes, then the magi, the sorcerers, what we're about to talk about, you can't put in a catatonic state and just throw down from a rod. That would involve sorcery and black magic. Okay, so
let's dig into it.
We made a hint of it last video. I held the reins on the chat. I held the reins on Jeff. I said, no, wait, we have to wait until we do next video. Right. But in the last video, okay, so when you look at Moshe at the burning bush, okay, the bush that's on fire but not being consumed, okay, we're going to take our time on this just a little bit here.
Yep.
I'm scrolling forward here looking for the actual verse. It's talking about the I am that I am. Where's the verse where he throws down his
chapter?
Oh, you know what? I think it's in 4 because we talked about it yesterday. Remember, what is in your hand?
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so 4 verse 3. If you look at that in the Hebrew, he throws down his rod or trident, as we talked about last video, and it became a serpent. Okay, so the word there is nakash. In Exodus 4, verse 3, it's nakash. Nakash means snake, serpent. There's no other way to translate that. You can't get anything other than snake or serpent from 4, verse 3. Okay, and that was Moshe's rod. But now, not saying that it's because of the different rod. I'm not saying that, but I'm just, trying to get details here for anybody who likes details.
Right.
Okay, so when we look at Exodus 7, and then it says Aharon cast down his rod, his trident, his staff, right? Possibly representing the Levites and Levitical priesthood to come, it becomes a tanim. It's not the word nakash. Okay,
different word altogether.
Now this is a word that Jeff and I have studied before separately, because Jeff and I like weird things where the Bible talks about mysterious, mythical creatures and things that the Western part of the world, along with black magic and sorcery, throw out the window as fairy tales nonsense. You know, they think of certain things that the Bible talks about, and they say, no, it's not saying that. It's using poetic language, because that's, Jeff, can I say this real quick before we get into it?
Yeah.
From what I see, usually the individual who says, you're reading too much into the mystical, you're making it what it's not, you're trying to make this fairy tale, quit trying to add to the scripture. This is a simple, it's good as it is. Why are you trying to change it, Ian? Why are you trying to make it more mythical? You're going to turn people away from this. You're making it a fantasy book, and then they're not going to believe anything else. Okay, first off, typically those individuals that think that have never experienced a miracle.
Amen. Yeah.
Typically, people who have experienced that have not been healed in a way that you cannot deny that it wasn't a natural thing. Okay, I've had miracles and healing where right before your eyes, and it does not make sense. This wasn't one of those, oh, God rapidly sped up the healing process. This is finger looks like it might have to be amputated, and it's black and purple, and then goes back to normal color within seconds. That is not normal. I have seen demons casted out. I've seen faces push out of stomachs, out of a stomach in particular, right? I have seen some things, okay? Typically, people who don't want to consider the fantasy, the supernatural, stuff like that, and they want it to stay comfort, they're used to churchianity. They're used to the pews, Jeff. That's why a lot of the Western world says, you know, they have, you know, their false gods and stuff, but it's not like there's actually demons powering those things. It's just they're because that's what they're used to, Jeff. Yeah. That's what they're used to. And when you try to point out and say, okay, well, fallen angels mated and had giants, even if they can accept that, and you say, oh, look, the Red Sea or the Reed Sea split and they walked down dry ground, the Jordan River, you've got manna flying down from heaven, you got all these supernatural things, and they say, but that was then. This is now. As if Yah changes, right? Doesn't it say Yah doesn't change? Amen. Look at the end of the book, Jeff, because we're going to be talking about that tonight too.
We are.
So here's my point. You know, maybe Jeff and I aren't right about every little weird thing. Okay, it is what it is. We're going to see what we see, and we're going to share. And we believe that we've got things right. And you know, if we get corrected, we get corrected, whatever. But to knock all of that out and dismiss all of it and say all the weird things aren't true, I would say that comes from a place of not experiencing the supernatural. I would say you are not ready to be uncomfortable in a spiritual realm, and you might want to start tucking in the back of your head as the possibility of that to come. You see what I'm saying? Because as things are going to progress, there's a possibility you might start experiencing things that are going to shake your whole world if you think that God is done doing the supernatural, if you think Yah doesn't do those things, if you think the Bible is meant to be just simple, cut and dry, there's no black magic and sorcery. Because we're going to be talking about that tonight, Jeff. We're going to be talking about black magic and sorcery. It doesn't end at just these verses, Jeff. It goes on in 7 and 8. We've got multiple examples of this. Okay, so Tanim, Jeff, right? You pull that up.
I just want to throw this out there, brother. We like the zeet seat of the Bible.
Yeah, like the fringe. We are.
Fringe.
We're fringe pop, aren't we? Whose show is that? I
don't know.
You don't know? There's a show called Fringe Pop.
Okay.
I always forget whose it is.
Nice.
But yeah, that's you and I, man. We're fringe pop all the way.
Yeah. So we see. Let's for the viewers. Let's talk about Tanim. What's the first time that we see this in the Bible is back in Genesis, during the creation when Yah is creating the animals that are in the oceans, in the seas, and Ian likes weird things. Amen. Yeah. So, but you know, God is creating this, and it says the Tanim. Most of the time you see in like some of the newer translations, you see whales, giant fish, all that kind of stuff. But this is literally talking about sea monsters, and more specifically, dragon. That's the word dragon. Go ahead.
Yeah, because if you look at it, because it's the Septuagint that straight up says it, right? And I was watching Greg Widener because he did a video on this. If you guys aren't familiar with Greg Widener, I love the man. I love his stuff. I don't think I've ever met him personally, but I got a lot of love for Greg Widener. Mm-hmm. And he talks about this. He did a short video talking about this and a few other things, and he said dragon because that's how the Septuagint pronounces it, but it's a dragon.
It's a dragon, right?
It's a dragon. The Septuagint outright says Aharon threw down his staff and it became a dragon. That's what the Septuagint says.
Right. And guys, listen, this is Can I get into why this kind of freaks Pharaoh out a little bit when we see this? Is that okay to hit this right
Jeff,
here, or do you want to hit the other?
We're having fun tonight. We'll go through a few things. Let's do it.
So, so just briefly, I don't want to do. They do Fringe Pop. I love it.
That's what it's called. Fringe Pop is Heiser and Judd Burton. That would make sense because both those guys are into very fringe topics.
Oh yeah, I love Dr. Heiser and Judd Burton, and be praying for both of those guys. They're going through some stuff right now. Anyway, so when we see Pharaoh, who is Pharaoh in their culture, in their religion, okay, which they hold very dear to them, so dear that they'll kill people to be with them in the tomb so that they'll have servants in the afterlife. I want to kind of really, and people will volunteer for this, to be, to go die.
Well, Jeff, you have, I got coffee grains in my throat. There's volunteers and then there's volunteers. I'm just saying, Jeff, from what I remember looking through Egyptian stuff, you've got the guy who volunteered and then you've got the guy who Epsteined, right? He was
volunteered.
Right, yeah. He was volunteered. Right.
So Epstein didn't kill himself. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Pharaoh, their major deity was Ra, the sun god. Okay, this is the god that helped bring up the sun, or that helped corral the sun and all this. He's the sun god. This is their major deity. Okay. Pharaoh is the incarnation of Horus, okay, which is the son of Pharaoh. So literally every Pharaoh is the incarnation of Horus, or he is a god. Everybody cool with that? So that's why Pharaoh thinks he's a god. He thinks he is the son of Ra. So when Aaron throws down his staff and it becomes a dragon, all right, what's the imagery that we have here? The imagery we have here is a god called Apep. All right, are you familiar with Apep? Yeah. This is the god that is shown as a giant snake or a dragon, and this is the main enemy of Ra. This is the dude that does battle with Ra all the time. So like, I think it was actually kind of portrayed in a good way in the movie that you watch with Gods of Man. Was that the one where they're showing that going up and where Ra's fighting this dragon on his ship up in the clouds? I don't know. There's one movie like that. Maybe that was Jupiter Descending or something like that. I don't remember. But there's a movie that kind of depicts that, and it does it pretty well. And that Ra is actually fighting this dragon. So here, again, setting up the scene, Moshe and Aharon come in, probably with the elders. They throw down this staff, or Aaron throws down his staff. It becomes a dragon. Pharaoh's like, whoa, that is my main enemy. That's the one that fights against Ra. Okay, we'll show you this Yehovah God. You're going to try to take sides with this Apep. We're going to throw down our rods. And so when they throw down their rods, he's like, man, we won. Look, we've got all these snakes against this one dragon.
It's the same word here, Jeff. Oh, yeah. When it says they cast down every rod and they became serpents, that word there is tanim as well.
So they've got all their dragons as well, right?
Right. Whatever Aharon's staff turned into, whether you want to believe it's a snake or a dragon or a crocodile, whatever it was, they had as well.
Turned into the same thing. And then when Aaron's rod begins to eat their other rods, this is a huge thing. This is the start of the judgments, is what I like to call against the gods, because here it is. Okay, you've got your God, we've got our God. Bam, let's robo-blocks them. Fight them against each other, and Pharaoh doesn't come out on top. So I think that's important to kind of look at, and then look at with the rest of the scripture on this. This is kind of freaking him out, even though he hardens his heart. It's like, wow, what is going on? So again, that's the typology that we see here, is that this is the direct assault on Ra, which is their supreme God. And of course, we see that at the end of the plagues too.
Yeah, there's multiple things here. You're having an attack of their gods. You're having an attack of Pharaoh as a god being represented here, right? Mm-hmm. So what are your views, Jeff? When you see dragon, are you thinking crocodile, or are you thinking like some kind of? Are you thinking crocodile? So I don't know if you noticed, but in the thumbnail, I told my wife, I was like, you got to get a crocodile in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't care where. It'd be nice if it's like facing the serpent, you know, so
Yep.
it looks like it's, because I wanted the two different schools of thought being
Sure.
acknowledged there in that imagery.
Well, and it goes both ways. It goes, some people believe dragon, some people believe that it's like a oh, what do they call their crocodiles over there? That right now just escapes me. They call it something a little different, but it is
Yeah,
like
but it comes with the understanding of monster, a
yeah,
land,
and
land monster.
these things can get up to like 2,000 pounds. They're
Dude,
huge.
yeah. Well, you got to think too. Let's pretend things haven't gotten smaller over time. Should we do
Right.
that, Jeff?
Yeah.
For the listener who doesn't
Sure.
want to think that maybe they were bigger, if we're going to go off of what it is now, right? You've got some pretty big crocs that come out of that area,
Right.
but up to even 20 plus feet.
Yeah.
There's certain types of crocs out there in the Nile of today, right? So mind you, if you're like me and you think maybe possibly when you go back thousands of years, not hundreds, but thousands, you
Right.
start to see things a lot bigger, right? And,
Yeah.
and of course, this isn't the same as before the flood, when
Right.
when crocs were who knows what size back then. I mean, they had freaking armadillos the size of a VW bug before the flood. We have exoskeletons of that, and you know, butterflies and dragonflies that you wouldn't be able to take out with a tennis racket now. It's insane.
Yeah.
You know, creatures that would not be able to breathe now in this world based on the
they're
oxygen levels that we have and things like that. But with that being said, we're looking up to 20-foot size crocodile monster things in the court, right? So here's a few things being communicated. First off, I wanted to mention the temple of Kom-Ombo.
Okay.
Kom-Ombo. Okay, that's Komombo. That's what I wrote down. Maybe I misspelled it. I wrote down a lot of Egyptian stuff the past couple of days, Jeff, and I'm not going to claim, just like how I say I'm not an expert on Hebrew, I am not an Egyptologist. Egypt is not something I tend to study often. So there might be listeners who are like, man, he is butchering this, butchering that. Just bear with me. Put things in the comments if you need to. I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm sharing what I believe Yaz told me to share, okay?
Yeah.
So you have the temple of Kom-Ombo, right? And that's all about crocodiles. And you have their crocodile-headed deity representation there. We're going to be talking about the heads here a little bit tonight, Jeff. But one of the things I wanted to mention was, the crocs typically came out of the Nile. Okay, so in this position, we're having not just Ra, not just the Pharaoh, but you have the Pharaoh, the Magi, the priest, the Nile, right? And the Pharaoh, his people, his magicians, and the Nile were considered the three pillars of Egypt. This was the three pillars of the Egyptian society. These were the three that you could not touch. These are the three that you were not allowed to deface in any way. These were the three you cannot say anything negative about. You didn't question, right? I mean, this was the source, the Nile, the magicians, and the Pharaoh, and they're all being confronted in this showdown along with everything else. I mean, and overall, and a lot of the studies that I did, it seemed to me like America's got the bald eagle. You've got other countries that have like the bear and things like that. You have this animal as the image. It seems to me back then, the image of Egypt was a crocodile.
It was.
So if we're looking at crocodiles here, Jeff, it's an attack on Egypt as a nation as well. Mitzrayim. So you have, I mean, very first showdown, you've got the Pharaoh, the Nile, the magicians, the overall god, the crocodile god, and Mitzrayim as a whole, all being confronted at once. And you have Aharon's one staff versus the many. You have the multitudes. It looks like the Israelites and their God are outnumbered. This is many gods versus one God. This is a nation of the slave taskmasters versus the slaves, right? So it's easy for the Pharaoh's servants watching to think we've got this.
I would also like to tie this in with back to Babel, just real quick, as we start with all these different gods and everything, because some of the viewers may think, okay, well, it's their gods, it's their fairy tale creations that are in their head. We see back at the Tower of Babel where Yah is going against some of the Elohim that are in his council. And guys, if you've never ever heard of this, I highly recommend. Dr. Michael Heisner has some books unveiling the unveiling the veil, or behind the veil. What is his book? I forget. But anyway, he has a great book on some of this stuff where he talks about the council of God. Dealing with Psalms 82 and different things like this, where Yah actually has a council of Elohim. They are not Yehovah. They're not gods in that sense, but they're created beings that Yah has set up. And during the Tower of Babel, we see that God's like, okay, you guys want to get worshipped as gods? We're gonna start some judgment with you. We're going to divide up the nations, and each one of you are going to be like a principality over a region. And he sets these things up. And here I see that there's a group of these Elohim that have shown themselves. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit with the heads and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I think these are actual beings, some form of Elohim, or perhaps even some sort of Nephilim could be. I mean, because there's two different trains of thought. Maybe these were Nephilim. Maybe these were human hybrid beings and things like, yeah, Reversing Hermon. Yeah, that's a good book too. So two different trains of thought here. Maybe these were some Elohim from the fallen council, or maybe these were Nephilim that were human hybrid creations, and we can look at that in a minute. But whichever way it was, these were actual beings that were either alive or still alive in the spirit, and they're going through and they're influencing these things. So these are actual judgments that Yah is doing on the nation. So every one of these things that go on, this is not only is it Moshe and Aaron going up against Pharaoh, it is Yahovah going up against these false deities, these false gods, and he is bringing judgment not only to the land of Egypt, but also to the principalities behind the powers of Egypt. And I think that's real important for us to bring out.
Yeah.
And listen, let's bring it into today. How about what kind of influence do we have over the United States? Or where you're living at? Maybe you're in Australia, maybe you're in Europe, maybe you're in Germany, maybe you're wherever. What kind of thing is going on? What kind of judgment is going on with the principalities that are behind the powers where you're at? And how much more important for it is us to cry out to Yah, just like the children of Israel. Man, if we don't pray, is God going to do anything? We should be praying on a daily basis. Go ahead.
Before Aaron and Moses, before Aharon and Moshe went in there and actually started confronting Pharaoh, it says that they bowed their heads and worshipped. This is after they had done their cries, their crying out in prayers and things like that. And if we're looking at today, and a lot of the things that I think you're hinting at, right? And I know you mentioned country names because we have viewers that have been saying that they're from Germany and Australia and stuff like that. But interestingly enough, those countries have some very interesting things going on as well. Absolutely. So you've got a couple layers there, Jeff, that I know you're not unaware of, that you knew what you were saying there.
Absolutely.
But when we're starting to look at today's modern application of that situation, trying to figure out where we're at, as it seems to me, the body's been crying out and praying on those things that you're hinting at for a couple years now. So, I mean, perhaps we're at the point where either worship is lacking or the heeding of the instructions and the commanding, as we see of Moshe and Aharon when they first go in. You know, when you see the butting up against the system and the governments and there's, trying to attack certain buzzwords that we're not going to use tonight on certain issues and things, and looking for exemptions and passes and understanding, and the masses that are against it don't want to hear it and they think it's nonsense and stuff like that. If we're not following the commandments, if we're not following what we're being commanded to do, and I don't just mean the 10 Commandments, I don't just mean the Torah, I mean instructions of Yah that we're given even individually.
That rhema word of God. What is God speaking to you to do? Not just the written word. Amen. I agree with that.
If we're not doing those things, I mean, Moshe and Aharon went in and they said, "Let my people go," but they didn't do the signs like they were told to do. And there's a couple things they didn't do there. So I mean, look what happened. The work got harder. So we need to consider those things when we're looking at what we are right now, and we say, where is God in all this? We've been crying out, we've been worshiping, we've been trying to voice things and be ambassadors. Well, there's some things we need to consider. Have you been praying through? Have you been worshiping? Okay, Amen. Then are you commanding and heeding the instructions?
Amen.
Are you boldly going before the throne of the principalities and stating what you're told to state, or are you standing outside twiddling your thumbs and picking apart what you were told to say and do and choosing, or maybe you're giving yourself instructions based on what you think God would want you to say, and you're not even Moshe or Aharon. You're not supposed to be there. Maybe you're supposed to be the elder that stays quiet, but either way, you should know your role based on your relationship with the Father. And I think that's some things that we need to consider if we're going to try to apply it to today, Jeff.
Amen. No, that's good. Yeah, maybe God has spoken to your heart, and you're being like Moses. Hey, I send somebody else. Get out of here, God. Those are options too. So I think that's important as we go through this. Not only is this a good study for us to look and see what happened, but again, Paul said these things were written for our benefit. So let's figure out what's going on here. And I just love that. I love this study, man. Um, you know, just like I think of this specific moment right here. I think of Elijah with the 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah. That when he came up against them on Mount
Yeah.
Carmel, I think of
Yeah.
this as a showdown, and this is
Sure.
the start of the showdown, guys. And this one went on for I don't know if we I don't. Let me ask you this. I tried to put a timeline on this, and I couldn't really get a good timeline on how long this took. A little fuzzy there. Do you think this was? You think this was days? You think this was weeks? Do you think this was
For what?
months? For the entire episode when Moses first starts going to Pharaoh. Yeah. Do you have a good timeline?
Okay.
on that?
I have some notes that we
Yeah.
will be discussing more so in the following videos, but
Okay.
overall, we are not given, from what I can tell,
Same thing.
a specific timing. I see that there's certain things where we've shown, 7 days has passed, certain things. We can add up certain timing clues to know that this didn't all happen in 1 week. We know that
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think I can argue that it didn't even happen in a month.
Amen.
But when it comes to trying to give exact amount of days,
Yeah.
from what I've studied, maybe
I don't know.
Jasher has something, and I don't even if Jasher does, though, I don't know if I would accept that as 100% accurate.
Right.
From what I can tell in the scriptures, like I said, I think I can definitely say more than a week, and I believe I can say more than a month. And we'll be going through that over the next few videos, but a specific amount of days I don't have. I would be inclined, like Kelly Joe here says, that it would be more than a month. We're looking at multiple months, I believe, which is a good thing to consider, that it wasn't all overnight. I mean, and we have to think about these things, right? And we're going to talk about this in further videos, but the views and the hardening of the hearts and how they're allowing themselves to think to keep going.
Yeah.
Well, when you have up and down,
Mm-hmm.
when you have the masses being told, no, right? Multiple,
Yeah.
No, take it away. No, bring it back. Now take it away. Now bring
Yep.
it back. Now do this. Okay, now do this twice. Now do this 3 times.
Right.
Now do it 4 times. Do it 50 times. Whatever.
Yeah.
And when you've got these rules that are just moving like waters up and down and all these different things, and it's over in a long, extensive period of time, it's easier for the spirit and the flesh to just become weak to the point of just like, okay, whatever you just tell me, I don't even care anymore. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on with Egypt, as not so much in this video, but in further videos, in further chapters, they start to get beaten down to where there's a depression and a weakness and a complacency, like you said. And I think of that, if it's over multiple months, that factors in as well. Okay, so Jeff, maybe this is where I get to bring up something that you didn't get to see, because I'm not ready to move ahead yet. Are you?
Okay.
Are you ready to move ahead?
No. Let's have it, man. Hit me.
If I had said I was ready to move ahead, would you have said yes?
Sure.
Well, I'm trying to feel out if you have something else on this, Jeff, because I do.
No, I don't really have anything else on this.
So maybe I have something new.
You may have a zinger for me, brother. You may have.
Okay. Again, the live audience is like, oh my gosh, these guys are ridiculous. But I'm trying to get you, man. So I'm going to try to get you here. Okay. So did you look at the word enchantments at all the different times that the magicians are doing things?
I did not. I do know that there's secret arts. I think it goes back to them.
But Jeff, it's not all the same word.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Just like the Nakash and Tanim.
Right. Okay.
There's different words, Jeff.
Interesting.
Okay, so I wanted to bring that up tonight. Okay, because that was something that was new for me doing this study. I was trying to look at enchantments, and I was like, okay, are these snakes that are catatonic state? Are these crocodiles? Is this black magic? Is this sorcery? I'm trying to look at all the different views to reconsider, to see, because every time I rehash through these big studies, I'm like, let's make sure that what I'm remembering from last time I did this study isn't something that I would change my mind on. So I like to look at all the different viewpoints, plus we like to acknowledge all the different viewpoints, right? So I looked at the word enchantments. I use KJV for anybody who's curious. So that mine uses enchantments. Depending on what version you have, might use a different word there, maybe sorceries or something like that. Yeah. So for this specific verse in verse 11 here, it's not always the case, Jeff. Okay. In this specific verse, it's lahat. Okay. Okay. Now get this, Jeff. It means a blaze, and it's referring to enwrapping magic as coverting and flaming fire, black magic, fire enchantment. Okay. Now, Jeff, fire. Well, it doesn't actually say fire black magic. It just says flaming enchantment, fire and wrapping
Right.
and magic. Okay.
Yep.
Did you know there's only one other place in the Bible that this word is used?
I did not. Tell me more.
So the only other place in the entire Bible where this word that is used to describe what the magicians and the sorcerers did with their staffs that fought Aharon's staff in this specific instance,
Right.
is also the same word referring to the flaming sword kicking Adam and Eve out of the garden,
Really?
making sure they never come back. That's the
Wow.
only other time. Flaming magic, flaming and wrapped, fire wrapped magic enchantment.
Wow. See,
So-
this secret arts.
But the other ones are secret. This one doesn't say secret.
Okay, I got you.
I'm saying, Jeff, there's a reason for that.
All right.
We'll get there when we get there, but go ahead.
So when I saw this, I've always likened back to the sacred sciences, the secret arts held by our secret societies today, and they all go back to Nimrod's time, which goes back to the Watchers, the Watcher technology that was given out. So how likely is this that this flaming art is being brought by Watcher technology to these guys? This some of this forbidden stuff that goes all the way back to the Watchers. That's where I tie this stuff in at, but I did not know that there were two different words talking about this. So I'm interested to hear what the other word has to say if we're getting into that right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we will see, because in the next plague that we see that other word, and I don't have too much to say on that. I'm just saying that there's different words, and I believe that there's reasons for that. Just like how I believe Nakash and Tanim are used in two different spots here in this Exodus for a reason, depicting two different things. I believe this is two different types of magic going on, two different types of enchantments, and I think that I have some notes on the other ones, and I want to hear what your views are on that when we get there. Okay. So are you ready to move forward? I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Did I finally get you for tonight?
You got me, man.
Okay, well, that's it. I'm good to go then. I did my job.
That's good. That's good. All right, yeah. Let's start off with verse 14. Let's get into that.
Yeah, considering we're past an hour, which is okay. We're doing less tonight, but okay. So Yahovah said unto Moshe, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Get you unto Pharaoh in the morning. Okay, so this is next morning. So there's another timing clue, right? But here's the thing. This is Yahovah saying unto Moshe. We don't know how much time has passed since the last one.
Right.
Okay, it says get you to him in the morning. So this could be the next morning, but there could have been some days past. We need to consider these things.
Right.
Right. And typically, if it's not back to back to back, it makes it easier for the flesh to say it's not even that big of a deal. How often, Jeff, do we, in good things and in bad things both, Yah helps us with something, and then time passes and we've forgotten to the point where, how many times do we see Yah reminding Israelites that even had nothing to do with Egypt, saying, I brought you out of Egypt.
I brought you out.
That's one of his main things that he reminds. He's got like 4 or 5 things, and this is one of his main things. Israelites that are 5-6 generations plus later, Jeff, he's like, but I brought you out of Egypt.
With a mighty hand.
Right, with an outstretched arm, right? And so there's a lot of significance here. Another point to consider, that this portion of Scripture is something that Yah brings up all throughout the Bible, that Yah's people bring up all throughout the Bible. Obviously, this portion of Scripture has a lot of significance, a lot of heavy weight, and we need to consider those things, especially getting into Passover. Okay, so whether it's the next morning or not, either way, we see Yah telling Pharaoh, or telling Moshe to go to Pharaoh in the morning, right? Could be the next morning, maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. He goes out into the water, stand by the river's brink against Sikkim, and the rod which was turned to a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand. Okay, so here's the thing. First off, some people say that he was out there getting ready to get water for the day, or maybe to bathe. Others go off of extra biblical texts that show that he was in a really big fancy boat, and and then depending on which cartoon or movie you subscribe to and and things like that, you maybe say, oh yeah, he was bathing or getting water, or maybe he was out in his big boat. But either way, we know that he was going to be in the water. Okay, so he tells him, bring that rod, right, which turned into a serpent. Okay, let's see, is it Nakash or is it Tamim here? Which rod is he talking about? Because he said it's a specific one, right? And that's Nakash. So this is Moshe's, because he's telling Moshe. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, and thou shalt say to him, right, speaking of Moshe, Yahovah Elohim of the Hebrews hath sent me to thee, saying, right, this is supposed to be Moses saying to Pharaoh, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. Thus saith Yahovah, in this thou shalt know that I am Yahovah. In this you will know. Okay, so now this is a sign that is supposed to be for many, but overall specifically, it is for Pharaoh.
Hang on, I just want to point something out here because we see Moses telling Aaron something in verse 19. Moses actually says these words to Pharaoh. I think that's important. I don't know. Yeah. He said, I'm going to have you as an Elohim to Pharaoh. And all of a sudden, Elohim through Moses is talking to Pharaoh, where we normally see Aaron doing the talking. This is really trying to get his attention. So anyway, I just want to bring that up.
Thus saith Yahovah, in this thou shalt know that I am Yahovah. Right? And this is for Pharaoh, that this sign specifically is going to show Pharaoh that he knows. Right? So we need to think about that too, because if Yah says it, it shall be, right? Going back to the whole I am. He who says it, it will be. So if Yah is saying this, then Pharaoh knows at this point. This is like the Pharisees. When Nicodemus came to Yeshua, he said, we know you've come of God.
Right.
You are of God. Come on now. They knew. They knew, Jeff. You want to talk about blasphemy of the Holy Spirit? They knew. Okay. Yeah. Pharaoh knows at this point. Okay, so I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that is in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river.
Right.
So Yahovah speaks unto Moshe. He says, say to Aharon, take your rod. even though he told Moses to bring his, right? So they both have theirs.
Yep.
Stretch out your hand upon the waters of Egypt. Stretch your hands out, right? Which we see a few times with Moshe and Aharon, and we even see that with Joshua and some battles with the Amalekites and things like that. You have the hand being stretched out and the rod and things like that. Upon the waters of Egypt, upon their streams, upon the rivers, and upon their ponds, and upon all their pools of water, that they may become blood. It doesn't say red like blood, it says become blood. And that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. Hold on. We'll go back to it, Jeff. We'll go back. And Moshe and Aharon did so as Yahovah commanded. Oh, they're doing as they're told. And he lifted up the rod and he smote the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh who saw it, in the sight of his servants who also were there and saw it, and all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. And the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river, and there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt, of Mizraim. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, different word there, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, neither did he hearken unto them. And Yahovah had said, as he said it was going to happen. Pharaoh turned and went to his house, neither did he set his heart to this also. And all the Egyptians digged around about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. 7 days were fulfilled after that the Yahovah had smitten the river. Okay. All right, so that's the end of 7. We're going to back it up now. Okay, so you've got both of their rods there.
Hang on. One thing before we dig into this, I just want to say in the last video that we had, there was a papyrus that we have.
I'm going to go over that. I've got quotes, Jeff.
Okay.
I've got quotes. I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, Jeff. I've got it. Okay.
All right.
So, is there a different note you wanted to get into instead?
No. That I just wanted to make. I wanted the people to know that we have documented proof that this plague from an Egyptian source, an Egyptian eyewitness, that this plague happened.
Right. And there was something in the last video that I said that I don't have in the quote here. You have to keep in mind the papyrus that you're talking about, the text, the Ipa word text, which is considered it's called something like the admonitions of a Egyptian sage or something like that. And there's only one copy, and it's the original, and it's in fragments. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. You've got missing portions and things. But it describes a lot of the book of Exodus. And it's got many plagues mentioned, and it's like a lamentations, hence why they call it admonitions, right? And it's from the Egyptian viewpoint of that sage who's basically crying out to his God, saying, "Why would you let this happen? All these things are happening." And I actually took the time today, Jeff, to get the quote for the water of blood, because of all the plagues that he talks about for tonight's video, the topics that we're going through, this is the one that he really hits. So I'm going to get into that in a second. But I want to just make sure we've got our notes before we get into that. Okay, so they're at the river's brink, right? So they're at the edge, okay? Aaron's got his staff, Moshe's got his. Aaron's putting his hands out as Moshe's telling him what to do, right? He puts his hands out, and it says, look, it says, the fish are going to die, the water's going to turn to blood, right? And it says, put your arms out over the streams, over the rivers, over their ponds, upon all their pools of water. And vessels of wood and vessels of stone. Okay, so some cartoons and movies actually
pools of water. I just want to say that those are cisterns right there. I just want to throw that out.
Okay. Yeah, like wells. Yeah.
Right.
But there are some. I can't remember if Prince of Egypt does this, but I know some of the movies go over this and some of them don't. Typically, your Sunday school and your average pastor behind the pulpit, again, not tacking, just saying typically, on average, generally speaking, they tell you that the river, the Nile, turned blood red, and that's it, right? And they'll even say blood red. They won't even say blood, a lot of them. Okay, and then you're sitting there going like, okay, yeah, that stinks. And there's a lot of things, again, remember, I mentioned the Nile is one of the top 3 pillars upon which Mitzrayim, Egypt, at this time sits upon. So you're attacking the Nile here. We had mentioned this in the Joseph videos, and you and I had mentioned this in another video as well, talking about how the Nile was a representation of the source and the wealth and the prosperity of Mitzrayim. This is where they got their water. This is where they got their fish. You know, when you talk about the dream, right, that Joseph interpreted and showed that the cattle came out of the water, that was representing the wealth and the prosperity that comes out of their source, the Nile. Okay, but this verse is telling us here in Exodus 7 that it wasn't just the Nile. Amen. It wasn't just blood red, but it was blood. Okay, so when you think the Nile, and you're sitting there in the church and you're not picturing in your mind that you're an Egyptian and you're trying to deal with all this. You're not imagining that you're a magician. You're not imagining that you're Pharaoh. You're not imagining that you're Moshe and Aaron or the Israelites. You're not putting yourself in that mind because you're sitting in the pew and you're uncomfortable and you just want to hurry up so you can go watch football on Sunday or whatever it is. Right. But when you start to put yourself in that mind, you go, oh, it's just the river. I still got faucets in the sink in the house, right, Jeff? Right. We still got our wells in our backyard or whatever.
And it talks about the vessels. I mean, if they had water stored up.
Jeff.
If they had water stored up anywhere, if they had water anywhere.
Yes.
If they went down to Walmart, they're trying to go to buy some Ozarka water in Walmart. It's all now turned to blood. That's the idea. This is everywhere.
And look what's being spoken here. Okay, so it says that they had to dig a roundabout, which based on my studies, I've seen 2 different schools of thought. Some thought that they were digging wells. Others thought that they were digging up actual streams and doing a new diversion, a kind of waterway of Yosef number 2 type of deal, right? But either way, they had to dig for water because everything. Okay, but Jeff, you're an Egyptian. Yeah. Okay. You and I are an Egyptian, and we're playing Egyptian chess, and we're hanging out. Yep. Okay. And we overhear people yelling about the Nile turning to blood red, right? Yeah. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then you look down at your cup, Jeff, and your cup is no longer water. You see what I'm saying? Like you want to talk about okay, when you try to argue, maybe there was something on his staff that made it turn a certain color. Maybe he put some kind of powder on there. Maybe he tried to poison it, and that's why the fish died. Maybe it turned blood red and turned blood because the fish had died and he just put a poison in there that killed the fish. You've got all these different views that you could have, right? Secular, atheistic type of views then and now. Yeah. But Jeff, it's in the vases, wooden and stone, in people's houses. It's in the palace, from great to small. This is not discriminating against gender or class or wealth. Everybody, it said everywhere, Jeff. Right. Okay, so let's do the quote before I forget, since you brought it up. I've got multiple pages here.
Well, and I just want to throw this out. The first three of these plagues, they also happened in Goshen. This also hit.
Go ahead, Jeff. I wanted to wait on it, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say this not only does this affect the Egyptians, this also affects the Israelites. This is the entire Nile. This is the entire area that is considered Egypt. Everywhere. Can you imagine this going on? You're a couple hundred miles down the Nile. You don't even know what's going on, and then all of a sudden, bam, the water turns into blood. What the heck is going on? And of course, you go turn on your Fox News or your CNN. You're trying to find out what's going on, and then you hear about this showdown. But this is everywhere, and I just, man, this is something else. Go ahead.
Okay, so Josephus writes that whoever drank the blood water was in great pain because of it.
Right.
and that he emphasized that it wasn't just red colored water or water that had been discolored, but that it had actually become blood.
Yeah.
So that's what Josephus said. Okay,
Some of
now
the some of the movies that we see, it's like he's pouring this dust out onto the water, or there's, and that's not what's happening at all. This is a literal creation miracle, even though it's it's maybe in the negative sense. This is showing that Yah is in charge and can do anything, all
right,
things.
right.
And the Bible says all things are possible. All things are possible. So I just want to throw that out there, brother.
Okay, I'm going to read this quote, and then I'm going to give you the floor for 2 seconds while I go fill my coffee.
If
But
you do that, when you get ready to do that, put the slides on. I'll start talking about the gods here. So,
okay, fine, we can do that.
I'm just saying.
No, that's good. It's a good point. It's
Yeah.
good, Jeff. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Ippur text, the papyrus, right? The admonitions of an Egyptian sage, right? And they've broken up into chapters and verses. Okay,
Right.
so this is from chapters 2 and 3, specifically 2 verses 5 to 6, 2 verse 10, and 3 verse 10. Okay, again, remember there's fragments and things. I didn't get to get all of the quotes. I think there's some other things in there too that they talked about how you lose your humanity. I didn't get the quote on that, but I know that is actually mentioned, and they talk about that in the Patterns of Evidence Exodus. And when they were talking about that, it seems like the understanding isn't that it wasn't you're drinking blood, therefore you're no longer having your humanity,
right?
But rather there's more to it. It's not just you see it and you're like, oh, how beast-like, how animalistic, you've lost your humanity, but rather there was a change in behavior, mindset, attitude. You saw somebody drink it and you saw how it affected them, and you're like, oh, they've lost their humanity. Well, I am not going to drink from this.
Yeah, these guys are also. I don't care how far you go back. Blood magic is always considered evil.
Yes.
And so when they're drinking this blood, they're all, that's, let's say that they believe in the white witch and the black witch. They're like, well, we're in the white witch side, so we're not doing blood magic. But that kind of mentality is going on with this as well. They're losing their humanity. I think that's important.
Right. And it says that it became stinky because of the dead fish, which fish can be kind of stinky whether they're dead or not, right? But now you have a bunch of dead fish, and it's not like some of the fish, but it seems like it was all the fish in the river.
Yeah.
And it says Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river. It doesn't mean that they didn't try. It doesn't say that the Egyptians wouldn't drink of the water. It said couldn't. Again, that seems to me to be indicating that some people tried and the rest were like, oh, what's his face tried, and I'm not doing that. I mean, it said that they were in pain. Josephus wrote that anyway, that they were in pain.
We know we can go for a while without food. You can only go
without water.
You can only go 3 days without water. And this is putting
except for Moshe on Sinai.
Right, there we go. Yeah, but that's supernatural, right? But this is what we're seeing, is that they're all of a sudden the fear of Yah is beginning to come upon the nation of Egypt, because here it is,
and Israel.
And Israel, right? And because now this life-giving water is turned to blood. Okay, well, quick, go in the refrigerator. I know they didn't have refrigerators, but go in the refrigerator, get the jug of water out. Nope, it's blood too. Everything that the water was, it's in blood.
And it's just so cool. I like how you mentioned how it shows the sovereignty and the power and the authority of Yah, because when you have the Nile, like I was trying to point out with the rods and stuff, they could try to tell themselves, oh, they defiled the river somehow, they made it toxic somehow, but they didn't touch the cup in your hand. You know that they didn't get the vase in your basement or in your room or whatever. So that really speaks power. Right. And it reminds me of like the manna.
Yeah.
In the wilderness, right?
Yeah.
Okay, every day but the day before Shabbat, it doesn't last to the next day.
Right.
But then you gather twice as much, which should go bad just like all the other ones. But now it lasts during Shabbat. So again, it shows that control, and it reminded me of that. And I thought that was really neat. We'll talk about the water and blood again, even though we talked about it a little bit last time. But okay, so here's the quote, and then I'm going to let you take the floor for a minute. Okay. So from the Ippur text, chapter 2, verses 5 to 6. This is how he wrote in Egyptian as it's been translated into English. Plague is throughout the land. Blood is everywhere. Okay, that's verses 5 and 6.
Yep.
Verse 10, the river is blood. The river is blood. Men shrink from tasting, human beings, and thirst after water. Okay. 3 verse 10, that is our water. That is our happiness. It says that is our happiness. Do you think it has something to do with happy? I wanted to. I
Yeah.
just wanted to put that out there. Okay. So this
Yep.
from the upper word text. That is our water. That is our happiness. What shall we do? And respect thereof, all is in ruin. Okay. So
Wow.
that's showing how just during that plague, because there's other parts of those fragments in that text where it shows that he's upset about other things, but this is him crying out to the Egyptian gods, saying there's blood everywhere, the river has turned blood.
Yep.
Look what it's doing to us. We can't drink it. That's our happiness. This is how he's referring to the Nile and their water,
Yeah.
and it went from the source of life to having where the life is found thereof, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put your thing on there. Are you going to be able to move the slides?
I think so. Yeah. We'll try it.
Okay. I mean, if not, I guess you're going to be stuck on that first slide. I'll put it on slide 1, or should I put it on slide 2?
Slide 2 is fine. Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Oh, you do got it. Look at that. Okay. All right. I will be back.
Hey, but pop it up. It's not showing yet. All right, brother. There we go. Okay, guys. So we're looking at this, and I just want to bring it out. There are some judgments that are going on here with the gods. Again, we've talked about this a little bit before, but we've got 3 gods: Kunum, Hapi, which he just mentioned, and Osiris. And so, with the god of Kunum, he's the guardian of the river, of the river source of the Nile. All right, so just want to point out some things here. This guy has the head of a ram. He's the god of fertility. He's the god of water. He's the god of procreation. All right, so I just had a couple things I just wanted to throw out. This the epithets. He's the divine potter. Gosh, we have been hitting on potter all the time. They would say that he's my guardian. He's the father of fathers. So he's kind of part of their creator god. They had like a trinity of their creator god type thing going on. And so what we see here is God is still going through, and he's going to begin judging these gods. So in other words, anytime God comes up and does something like this, these gods should be able to counteract it or stop it. Again, how long did it say that this plague went on? It went on for 7 days. 7 is the number of completion. And 7 is all this. 7 is the place that goes on and says, okay, look, you had your chance to fix this. You couldn't. Jehovah is God over you. Okay, again, we're showing some judgments of these gods. So here we see this is the first god that we're talking about. Hapi is the next god. He's the Egyptian god of the Nile. Notice here he's pictured as a water bearer. Okay, so not only the picture of the god of the Nile, but also the picture of the water bearer. And again, we're talking about that God has not only changed the water into blood in the Nile, but also the vessels. I think this is incredible because this, again, getting back to, Karen, see, I'd love for you to share some of these things of research. But yeah, so turning the water into blood, amazing stuff going on here. And again, it's stinking, it's smelling. And then the last one I want to bring up is Osiris, guys, and talk about him. You can't hardly see this very much, but this is Osiris. He is the god of fertility. He's the agricultural god, god of the underworld, god of the dead. Osiris is the one that was, supposedly chopped up, killed by Set, chopped up into 7 pieces and thrown about the places of Egypt. And I'll wait to get back with Ian on a couple of things here because I don't want to dig into that some. But main thing here about Osiris was believed to have been the life source of the Nile. In other words, the Nile was literally Osiris's bloodstream. So this Osiris was the god that was giving life to Egypt, and every time that the banks of Egypt would overflow and come back, this was his bloodstream going out and providing life, and then it comes back. And so literally when God says, okay, you believe that Osiris this is his blood, I'm going to turn it into blood. And when God turns it into blood, bam, all of a sudden there's death. So instead of Osiris being in charge, giving life through the Nile, God's saying, no, I'm in charge. And what you thought was life is actually death. I'm going to turn it around. So he's just combating these gods on every side. And so literally, according to their religion, their gods, Kunum, Hapi, and Osiris should have been able to like smack God around because who's this Jehovah God? He's nothing, right? So they should have been able to combat this stuff, but instead it lasts for 7 days. And this Can you imagine, guys? Can you imagine being in a place and you're sitting there? Oh yeah, Kelly Joe, hang on, we're going to get there. I wanted Ian to be back. To be back when we talked about that. But here we have these Egyptian gods, and they should have been able to like combat this Jehovah God. Who's this puny Jehovah God of his slaves? That's the mentality. No one remembers the God of Joseph. No one remembers Joseph. This is like a long time away from that. And then here Pharaoh is mighty, and all of a sudden we have this massive attack going on by this foreign god, and nothing's going on. Day after day. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever tried to do a water fast. If you've ever tried to do a water fast, that's tough, guys. You're trying to not drink water. You're trying not to eat, and bam, that is some serious stuff going on. And for 7 days, they're not able to find water. And says the Egyptians went out and they started digging around and trying to do stuff. I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing that we see that these Egyptian gods, again, we're talking about Osiris, we're talking about Hapi, and we're talking about Kunum, where they should have been able to do something. Kunum is my guardian. Is he really? He's been judged. He's not your guardian anymore. The Egyptian god of the Nile, the water bearer, the one that brings water, can't bring any water anymore. It's being judged, right? And then we've got Osiris. His blood is actually the Nile River itself. He's our protector, and bam, he can't even protect us. So I want you to get the mindset here. This is 7 days of this stuff, and wow, I just find that it's amazing. We see that these gods are being defeated right before the children of Israel's eyes. Ian, if you're back, I'll just throw it out that you're muted, brother. So I just want to throw that out. But yeah, so I think that's amazing. Yeah, I told Karen we're gonna or Kelly Joe, I wanted to get in this when you got back. So we've talked about these three specific gods being judged, and that they have no power to fix the things that Yah has done. Mm-hmm. We've got the ram, the guy that has the head of a ram. We've got that Kunum. He's the guardian god. He can't guard anything.
Guardian of the Nile specifically.
Yeah, we've got Hapi here, supposed to be the water bearer, and she can't even do that, right?
Hapi is supposed to be the child of Khnum, by the way.
Yes. Yep. And then we've got Osiris. He's supposed to be the very lifeblood. His blood is supposed to be the Nile itself.
Yeah.
The giver of life. And none of this. 7 days, Ian. 7 days this goes on. 7 is the number of completion, and God is just kind of pimp slapping them around. You can't do anything with this. And they're not able to stand up to it. Kelly Joe brings this up. I was going to bring this up. I believe now. I don't know where you stand on this, and that's all for the slides for right now. We can bring them back in a minute. But okay. I don't know where you stand on this, but in the research that I did, and then coming up with what some of the things I read from Rob Skiba, when I was doing my book, I already came across this, and then kind of was confirmed by some of the stuff I read with Rob Skiba. I believe Osiris was Nimrod, was Gilgamesh, was a bunch of these other names. And so I kind of see this as being the same guy. We see that, Nimrod, we see some of that stuff, getting chopped up. And we see the obelisk. There was one piece that was missing that they couldn't find. That's the obelisk that we see everywhere. I don't know if you have anything on that tonight or not to go with that stuff. But again, we're seeing Osiris judged. We're seeing Hapi judged. We're seeing Khnum judged. And and they're not able to do anything. And that, can you imagine that you've put your faith, your life, your vestige, everything that you have in these gods, and then all of a sudden, the very thing that they're supposed to protect, the very thing they're supposed to do, they are powerless against the God of Jehovah. I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. I wasn't going to touch on too much of the whole Osiris and Nimrod supposed possible connection.
Sure.
I was big on the connecting that before. That's a topic that I've been asked to re-look into, and to look at the sources of the information. And I was able to find some sources that date back further than the people who were critiquing it thought. But I still want to re-go through that because I'm starting to think that maybe some of the connections are not a fair connection. We want to make sure that we're not inheriting lies from our fathers and things like that.
Amen.
So I'm very familiar with that study. So here's some of the things I wanted to talk about with the Nile, though. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be connected. I'm just saying we should be careful with the connecting. That's all I'm going to say about the Osiris and Nimrod thing.
Yep.
Okay, hold on. My notes, dude. If you were to see my notebook, I mean, you saw some of my basic notes in the very beginning.
Oh, brother. Yeah.
I got stuff. I've got pages upon pages. For tonight, I've got like 6 pages, and they're not organized. Okay, so when I looked, and I told Jeff about this before I went into the video, and I told my wife this was going to happen, and I knew it. Let's say I watched 10, which it was more than that, but let's say I watched 10 YouTube videos from 10 different researchers, some of which are doctors, some of which are Egyptologists, some are believers, some are secular, some are Egypt historians and things. I wanted to see all the different views on the different gods and stuff like that. And they all are talking about the 10 plagues and the 10 gods of Egypt and stuff like that. And you would think that if you have 10 guys saying 10 plagues, 10 gods of Egypt, that it'd be the same list of 10. And it is not, right? Everybody, I mean, you've got the Egyptian mythology and understanding of their deities change over time. You also have the understanding the translation of what we're looking at. We're trying to comprehend back then, now. So there's all these different views. You also have the 2 different kingdoms. You have the southern and the lower and the upper, right? The lower being the northern, the upper being the southern. You've got the old, middle, and new kingdoms. So Jeff and I are of the opinion that this would be Middle Kingdom time period, but depending on the views, you're looking at people looking at deities from the newer kingdom. I don't think anybody's putting Exodus in the old kingdom, but who knows anymore on the different views. So you've got Khnum being the guardian of the Nile. You've got Hapi being the spirit of the Nile. You've got Osiris, who the Nile is supposed to be his bloodstream. But there's some other things. I'm trying not to bring up the other gods just yet, because there's other ones for the other things. Okay, I don't want to talk about that just yet.
Yeah, I thought it was
Doctor. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought it was interesting when you're going through and you're looking at some of these gods. They have different skin colors. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that yet, or there's and I'm not talking about black and white guys. I'm talking about green and blue. Different things going on there. Again, that maybe gets into some of the zeet seat of the.
So Dr. Missick, who has studied Egyptology greatly, had some issues with some of the people's lists, right? And he was saying that Khnum is not just the source of the Nile, but he's also the creator god.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, this is a shout back to our first video of this series. He is the one that according to Egyptology, creates man out of clay or dust.
Yeah, he's known as a potter.
And he does this on his potter's wheel that we talk about in the first video. I'm not going to rehash that. Anybody who's curious, you can go check out the first video. Also, Hapi, the son of Khnum, is the god of innovation. So I wanted to bring that up, but a lot of my other Egyptian god deity notes that I wanted to get into are more about the other place we're going to get into tonight. That's all I have to say about that for now. But before we move forward from 7 to 8, because we're about to wrap up 7, right?
Well, think about what you just said, though. Hapi being the god of innovation, right? We see Hapi as the water bearer, right? So again, moving water into vessels, moving waters into some form of aqueduct or some kind of an innovation. Even with all of her innovation, she's not able to combat what Yah is doing. I think that's those are things to be brought up with that. Yeah,
that's a good point that Karen brings up. Karen says she's going to send me her notes, which means she's got a whole book of things that I'm not saying and that I don't see that she wants me to see. Yeah, she's a Bible teacher type, so if she hears some notes, she's got some notes to say, she's going to let you know it,
I like it.
She's one of those wise teachers with discretion that says, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong in public. I'm going to show you things that you need to consider in private, but it's good. I'm looking forward to her notes. And I expect that she's probably going to send me a whole book in an email, and hopefully I'll be able to get through it all. I don't know. Nice. Okay. So before we move to chapter 8, I don't know if you're ready to do that just yet, but we need to start thinking about Exodus being compared to Revelation.
Oh, I do. Yeah. Amen.
That needs to be brought up at this point, okay? Because we're talking about waters turning blood, okay?
Yeah.
So what comes to mind? Revelation, right?
Amen. Brother. Yeah.
So I don't know about you, Jeff, but when I was first born again, eschatology was huge in my book. For the first 2 years, that's all I did was run around telling everybody the end is near, Yeshua's coming back. Get ready, get ready, get ready. And for those first 2 years, I kept thinking it was going to be within those 2 years. I wasn't date setting or anything like that. I think there was one time that I said something that I highly regret and repented of. But overall, my mindset was much like the disciples in from 30 to 70 AD, thinking this is it. It's right now. It's going to happen right now. I mean, I was talking to God about how he needed to take the desires out of my heart to have a house and children and things like that, because that would never happen. Well, now I have a house and I have children. So obviously I was not getting the full picture. He gave me a puzzle piece and I made a bunch of other puzzle pieces to connect to it like a fool does. But in Revelation, we see that as well, don't we, Jeff?
Yeah.
Rivers and waters turning to blood. And when I was doing those eschatological studies and looking for signs of the end times and stuff like that, and I was focusing on things like mass animal deaths, anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, that's a whole study. You could spend the next 10 years, if we have that much time, studying that topic on the severity and the frequency and how often that's happening and how it's getting worse in severity from millions of bee die-offs in one moment and it's not explainable, to the beaching of 50 whales but none of the other fish in that same water, and then the next day it's across the plain in a different country. They'll have, one of the ones that really stuck out to me, it was like 30 million of one type of fish in Sweden or something like that. None of the other fish were dying. It was just that one fish. So it seemed very clear to me and people who were seeing that as a sign of the end times. Well, one of those signs that I used to pay attention to, and every once in a while I'll look it up, for the past 8-9 years, is water turning blood red. Yeah. Most of those cases were not being considered blood, right? But some of them were.
Like an algae. I think there was
like a
red algae.
Well,
some of them.
That's the thing, Jeff. Some of them, yes, but a lot of them were being portrayed as red algae. And then there was believers who were scientists as well going out and saying it's not red algae.
Really?
Yes. I've got a whole playlist dedicated to it at the DNG 144 on YouTube. I don't have any videos of my own on there. I mean, I have a DNG 144 playlist where I take every video I've done on YouTube, except with the exception of a few that I felt like I shouldn't have done. So all the videos I did with you, a lot of the videos I did on Disputed Lands, a lot of the other videos I've done in the Straw Night of the series, I put them all into one playlist. It's like 60 of them now. Anyways, I have multiple playlists, and one of the playlists is water turning blood red. And I don't know how many videos are in there now because YouTube likes to delete my stuff a lot, as well as other people's videos. They'll get deleted, not just my playlist.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of cases of ponds, even in Texas, to seas, lakes, portions of oceans on certain parts. And some of them came out to be red algae. And there was one other thing that was considered a natural cause, natural answer. But a lot of them were actually proven to not be the case. And there was a couple times, Jeff, that there was reports, and I don't know what happened of it because a lot of the people that were reporting it end up dying.
Right.
They volunteered, Jeff, as it seems to me.
Really?
They were volunteered. But there was a couple scientists. There was a woman who wasn't a believer, and she was starting to think about the Bible because she was taking rain samples in Sri Lanka and putting it under microscope, saying that there was actual blood in the rain. And she was freaking out about that.
Wow.
And she had come out with her reports, and then she disappeared. So I don't know what happened with that. Make of it what you will. I'm just saying that if you're curious on that topic, last I checked, there was hundreds of videos on YouTube, some of them saying it's red algae. Some of the cases it is red algae. But it seems like there's reason to believe that it's not always red algae blooms.
Well, and we see this, in like you say, I think bringing it into Revelation 8, verse 8, and the second angel sounded as if it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. It doesn't say that it just turned red. It said became blood. I think that's important to recognize. That same part of same type of wording here that we see in Exodus that the water became blood. It didn't become like blood; it became blood. And again, in Revelation 16:3-7, if you want me to go and read that,
go for it.
This is a little bit later, a different part of John's revelation. The second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. Sounds exactly like what happened here in Exodus. The fish died. What living souls are in the sea? It's the fish. Third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and the fountains of waters, and they became blood. Same thing going over here. Aaron, he's putting his staff out over the Nile. He's putting it out over the rivers. He's putting it out over the ponds. He's putting it out over the cisterns. He's putting it out on your cup, on your vessels. Everything is becoming blood. And I think that's very important to show. I agree, man. When we go through Exodus, I think Exodus is a warm up for what we're going to see in the last days.
Oh, for sure, Jeff. Here's the thing, and that famous or infamous, depending on your view, chapter of Exodus talking about the blessings and cursings, isn't it in that chapter, Jeff? Correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't it say, "I will bring upon you the wonders of Egypt and the curses of Egypt"?
Yes.
Isn't there some verse? I know that's in there somewhere, but is it that portion? Because I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something to think about. That's something that's often dismissed. And you look at the Israelites of that time and you're like, whoa, you don't want the curses of Egypt on you. That's crazy. Yeah, but if we're seeing that, and this isn't the only one, much of Exodus, we're going to be talking about this for 2, 3, 4 videos, Jeff.
Right.
Comparing Exodus to Revelation, because it's important for a lot of reasons. And the matching up, this isn't just a 1 or 2 off.
No, it's a lot.
This is not just, there's a couple similarities. We're talking matching up to the point where I can't help but think you have to see that there's a match here, that there's a reason for the match. You have a declaring of the end from the beginning, Jeff.
Yeah.
You have a fulfillment of that verse saying, if you don't obey, curses and wonders of Egypt, my signs in Egypt will occur again, Jeff. I would say Revelation shows that it took to this point. So here's something to throw out. First off, before I take it off the screen, Mitzi here in the live chat says, have we considered that the water was filled with the blood of the innocent Hebrew babies?
That's interesting. I've not done that before.
I haven't considered that either. But even if it wasn't their blood, it would most definitely be a good match of symbolizing. But could it have been the actual blood of the? I mean, what is outside of Yah's power, Jeff? What can he not do? Yeah, Jeff. I mean, we've got Abel's blood crying out to him, and we've talked about that in the Gen 4. We talked about the frequencies of blood, and bears can smell it for miles, sharks can smell it for miles. Well, God can smell it from outside the firmament and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, it would make a lot of sense. I hadn't considered that either. That's an awesome comment on Mitzi there. Did the Hebrew water vessels also become blood? I believe it did. As Jeff mentioned, we're going to see that there is a certain point where the plagues are not going to be affecting the Israelites. I'm going to be talking about that tonight before we end the video. But before we say that, until we say that, everything we talk about affected all of Mizraim, Israelites included. So there is a point where there's a separation, and we will discuss that.
I sent you a picture. I don't know if you could share that or not, but that's
in the private chat.
No, on Facebook Messenger. I know I'm just trying to throw stuff out.
I'm not even on Facebook right now, Jeff. You're trying to mess with me. You're trying to make my internet stop working. Is what you're trying to do.
If you want, I mean, I can pull it up on mine. But I've got a nice chart showing some of the similarities between Exodus and Revelation.
Okay. Oh man, you're going over all of it though. Should we leave this for later?
We can leave it for later.
I mean, I'm going to let you have this call, Jeff. I'm always controlling things, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Your call, Jeff. Do you want to show it now, or you want to show it later?
Well, we show it now. I think these are big guys. Listen. We'll talk. I just want to show what we're talking about now, and we can kind of refer back and forth to it. Maybe just something we save as a graphic that you can throw up every once in a while if you want. But I think it's important to show. The list is pretty complete. I mean, it's not totally complete, but it is pretty complete. And I think it shows a good picture for people, not saying that it's just 1 or 2 things, just to show you the significance of it. Most of the people that are watching have gone through the plagues of Egypt. And I think it's important to kind of see that stuff. So yeah, I'd like to. I think it's showing it now would be fine.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out, or should I just share a screen now that I got rid of it?
You could share a screen. Yeah,
Okay,
that's probably
give
easier.
me 2 seconds. Let me pull it back up. I saved the image, and then I was like, how am I going to download this into the thing? I'm trying to think of this stuff. Usually, my wife prepares videos ahead of for me if I need things done.
Oh,
Special
so
like that.
you could go to where you have on the brand, and you could upload that as an image. But I don't know. No, I don't
Well,
know how
no,
you do it.
I'm just gonna share the screen, Jeff. You're gonna
That's
confuse
fine.
me. I'm not
That's
good
fine.
at technology, Jeff.
All right, brother.
Okay, let's go to share screen. This I can kind of figure out, right? Share system audio. I don't even know what that is.
Now you just
Okay,
want to
share.
share that.
Oh yeah, look at that. A screen within a screen within a screen. Okay,
There we go.
Are you able to see that? Is that blown up good enough?
I think people can see that fine. Yeah.
Okay, so for tonight, we're looking at the first floor, the first four, right? You have
Four,
the blood water, Exodus 7, and then you have blood water, Revelations 8 and Revelation 16. You've got the trumpet and bowl. Frogs, you have, we'll be going over in a second here, right? In Exodus 8, and you have that in Revelation 16 as well in the bowl. Gnats are not in the in Revelations. There's some things that we're going to be able to pull up later on that though. And then you got flies is not as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to leave that up a little bit longer?
I think if guys, if you want to take a screenshot of that, take a screenshot of it. Again, we're just trying to, so you don't have to kind of go back and reproduce things yourself, but these are just kind of some good tools to show. Amen.
Okay, I'm going to exit out. So anybody who's trying to write it down, if I didn't leave it up long enough, you're going to have to pause it or go back or something like that.
Yep.
Okay, stop screen. Do this. Okay.
There we go.
Hey, for me, that was impressive that I was able
I'm
to
impressed,
click.
man. Yeah,
I clicked the right buttons, Jeff. Look at me. I did it.
Your wife is back there going, woo! There we go.
Yeah. If she's watching this, she may or may not be. It depends. Sometimes when she watches, it messes up the internet, though. Yeah, Karen saying Yah was revealing the evidence of the murders. They tried to hide in the river. I think I put that on the screen, but let me do that one more time because that is amazingly poetic.
That's good.
We've got Karen and Mitzi for a 2-punch here on things that we would not have had in the video had they not said.
Guys, listen, that's why it's important. We like you to be active in the chat. We do not know everything. Amen. We try to study out. We try to look at stuff. But listen, the Apostle Paul said we all know in part. And man, that's very impressive. That's a great word, Karen. See, amen. Thank you for that.
Okay, let me copy this. Karen was also sharing Deuteronomy 7:15, which is a good one. Let me put the verse in there. We're going to do this. 7:15. Know the evil diseases of Egypt, which you knew upon you, but will lay them upon them that hate you. So that's one of the references. I think there's multiple verses that refer to this, but this is one of them. So Karen was able to find one of the verses I was referring to there. Okay. So we brought up the water turning to blood. We talked about the Nile being the source and stuff like that. Is there anything else we need to discuss on 7 before we move forward?
I think we're good there. I mean, 7 days passed after Jehovah had struck the river. Again, that 7 is the number of completion. If their gods had any chance, or it was laid open for them, hey, if you're God, why don't you fix what I just did? Nothing. Silence. Crickets. So.
Okay.
I do want to bring out one little thing where it talks about nevertheless, the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah.
So that word enchantments there or secret arts that you have is lot, not the same word as when they threw down the staffs and it became a snake or dragon or crocodile.
I question this. To me, this one may be some shenanigans, some tomfoolery by their magicians. Because Yah has already turned every vessel into blood.
Right.
So if they're starting to pour out their vessel, obviously it's going to be blood because it's already been turned. I call shenanigans on this one.
Right. And I was going to bring that up as well. I was going to ask you on that because there's a couple of times you've got this word here and then they all of a sudden stop, right? The magicians just stop because they can't do it. And we're going to get to that tonight as well.
Yep.
So here's something that is often said behind the pulpit, but we need to say it as well, Jeff. Okay. So the Nile turns blood. All these water and vessels turn blood. People's wells, the cisterns turn blood, right? All these different things. And they have to dig around it for a new water source and stuff like that. And so then what do the magicians do, right? And they say, we have deities too. Do they say, who undoes this? Because our gods are more powerful than your God. He's going to undo this and make our Nile cleaner. We have a God who's the guardian of the Nile. We've got the God who the Nile is. No, they add to it. We can do that too. We can mirror it, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they say mimicking is like supposed to be the highest form of flattery?
Right.
When you can't best it, you try to mirror it. And so, but yeah, the word lot here, it says properly, it's covered. That is by secret, right? So implication, it's incantation through secrecy. Okay, so you've got some adverbial stuff going on here with secretly, softly, privily, doing the enchantment. So there's a couple things of looking at here. I mean, we're talking either secretly in terms of, shenanigans, like you said, or did they not do this publicly? Is it one or is it both?
Yeah, I think they did it publicly. Yeah, and my opinion is like, oh, we can do that too. And they give me this vessel. And they pour out the vessel. See, we did the same thing.
We know for sure that Pharaoh saw it because part of the reason was to make Pharaoh be at ease, right?
Yeah.
But is it possible, Jeff? I'm just throwing out a theory here. Is it possible?
Yeah.
That they secretly not only shows that they were doing shenanigans, but they did this not in the open because they don't want the Egyptians to be blaming them,
right,
for being a part of adding to the problems that are going on. Because everybody's gonna be upset with all this blood and fish death, and then they say their own magicians and priests are, hey, we can add to that. Hey, what are you doing?
None of them know how many days this is going to go on. We don't know when the Egyptians did this. When they're the sorcerers and magicians, we don't know when they did this, but man, 7 days go on.
They might have had some time to think about how they were going to do it. They might have had to hit the books, Jeff.
I guarantee, this is let's think of Jeff. I guarantee Pharaoh's going to them and like, hey, you need to pray, you need to stop, you need to get this thing stopped. I mean, I remember watching. There's a movie called Patton. I don't know if you ever watched that movie. I really like that movie with George C. Scott in it. And there's a scene where General Patton is trying to go up against this German brigade, and the weather is bad. And he calls this chaplain in, and he tells the chaplain, this is a movie. I don't know for sure, but they say this is a pretty factual part of the account. And he says, look, chaplain, you need to pray and ask God. We need good weather so we can get air support so we can kick these Germans in the rear, right? That's not a quote from, but and then he prays. I think the same thing's going on here with Pharaoh. Hey magicians, you need to get this thing turned around. 7 days. You're the leader of the world right now, and you're starting to be brought to your knees. Again, this is we're just starting right now, and how much of their commerce is based off of fish?
Yeah.
Have we thought we haven't even brought that into the play yet?
Yeah.
This is starting to weaken the economy of Egypt. Yeah. This is not just affecting the big corporations. This is not just affecting their stock market. This is not just affecting the stores in Walmart. This is affecting the food supply already, and this is not only the water supply but the food supply. So I think that's interesting.
No, it's a good point. And we're going to be seeing the economy drop all the more. Hence why you and I brought it up in yesterday's video, talking about how if you're looking for the chronology of Exodus, it might be smart to look for when the economy dropped the worst. And there's one specific time in a 1,000-year portion where that happens. And it just so happens to line up ever so nicely with what seems to you and I to be the timing of the Exodus. Not everybody would agree with that, though. No, that's a really good point, though. So I wanted to get that enchantment word in there because it is not the same. This is not fire magic this time, right? Like I said, there's only 2 instances. So that time with the rod, that was it. And then you've got the Garden of Eden, and that's it. So every other time we see the mages doing some mirroring, it's a different type of magic. Maybe this was a blood magic, and the other one was a fire magic, and things like that. We know blood magic is a thing that actually exists. The occult is very much still into that to this day.
Yep.
Okay, so we see, after the Pharaoh's able to see that, then it says he was able to harden his heart and he didn't listen, right? We're given that. Look, it says the magicians of Egypt did so, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And Pharaoh turned and went to his house, and he didn't set his heart to this either. I saw it mimicked. I saw, that doesn't kadosh. That doesn't set your God apart from ours.
Right.
He's not really investigating the matter as a king is supposed to. Okay. So they're digging around to get other water after 7 days after the Yahovah had smitten the river. Okay, are we ready to move forward?
We are.
Okay, now they're a little over 2 hours, but that's okay. That's okay.
We're doing good.
We're doing really good.
Yeah.
But it's funny, when I was first doing the list up, Jeff, I heard this was the first time to do 2 chapters. And I said 7 and 8 is not going to take as long. And y'all kept saying, are you going to draw the lines where I tell you to, or are you going to try to do it your way?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Now do it your way or do it Yahweh. Here we go.
Right. I was going to say, not my way, Yahweh. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one, Jeff. Okay, so moving on to Exodus 8 here. Yahovah spake unto Moshe, go to Pharaoh and say to him, and we know at least 7 days have passed, right? Possibly more.
At least.
Well, and then you're looking at, it was the morning, and if it was the morning after, we're looking at 8 days, and then you got to think there was a time that he had gone in before and they had to do all the bricks and stuff. So we're looking at 9 or 10 days, probably 10 days at the least. I would argue more than 10 days. So we're looking at more than 2 weeks, more than likely, since Moshe and Aaron had gone in to speak to Pharaoh the first time go. Okay, so go unto Pharaoh and say unto him, thus saith Yahovah, let my people go. Thus saith Yahovah, let my people go. Not Moshe. This is God's people. Again, we're going to emphasize that almost every time, I think, that they may serve me. Okay, so we had sacrifice, we had feast, now we have may serve me. Okay, not that that's contradictive or that it's different, but I'm just saying that there's multiple things here being said. Yes, magicians were the sons of the sons of Belial, I think is what pt3 is trying to refer to there. Okay, if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. Okay, and the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house and into your bedchamber. So they're told to tell this ahead of time. Upon thy bed, into the house of the servants, upon thy people, into thy ovens, into your kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come upon both on thee and upon thy people and upon all thy servants. And Yahovah spake unto Moshe, say unto Aharon, stretch forth thy hand with the rod over the streams, over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause the frogs to come up upon the land of Mizraim out of the waters. Okay, so we'll go back, Jeff. Don't get stressed with me. Okay, we'll go back.
I'm holding.
Okay, and Aharon stretched out his hand over the waters of Mizraim. The frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. Mizraim, the magicians. Okay, we'll stop there and we'll go back. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you too much. I know what it's like to. Okay, so here's the thing, Jeff. I'm gonna ask you something, and then you're probably gonna have some stuff to say here. And we got a bunch of stuff to talk about with frogs, right?
Yeah.
So this was new news to me this week, studying this out, Jeff. I did not know that frogs were considered sacred in the land of Egypt of this time. I didn't know that. So for anybody who's not familiar, okay, and this is even the secular people, for anybody who might be rolling their eyes at me right now, even the secular Egyptologists will say the frogs were sacred to the Egyptians of the time of the Exodus, no matter what timing of the period you believe it is. So much so that they were not allowed to kill them.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah.
I felt that needed to be said.
Yeah.
Because
it goes even more than that. They had amulets. They were on their coins. They were all over the place with frogs. I don't know if you want to bring that slide up real quick. It's just the one slide.
I can do that.
Bring up that slide while we're talking about.
Do you know which number it was?
It's on it right now. I already got it moved to it. Yep. Okay. So yeah, this God that we're dealing here now with a judgment. This is the God of Chpt. And this God is dealing with the frogs, and this God was the fertility goddess. So just like what we think of Isis with being the fertility goddess of,
was also considered the goddess of Nile, Isis, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. So the goddess of the Nile, Hecate, and this was a really popular god, a fertility god. So much so that, like you say, they were not allowed to kill frogs. So there were no Cajuns in Egypt. There's no one eating frog legs.
Eating frogs. Yeah.
There we go. And so these, just like we over here in the States, with Easter, can we just say Easter, right? People look at bunny rabbits, right, being a fertility thing, and they're able to reproduce so much. You sent me a video that I really, really enjoyed. Talking about that, one rabbit in a season can produce 400 rabbits, I think is what the term was. But one frog in that same time frame can was it like 60,000 or something, like some crazy number like that? I mean, it just blows the water, blows the water out of a rabbit being the image of fertility. This frog, and again, Hecate had a human body. She had green skin, but she had the head of a frog. And so, was this, what's going on here with this? And she was supposed to be this welcome deity into people's life, and we want to have this, but all of a sudden, man, there are frogs everywhere. And if we have this image that we're given by Yah. They're everywhere. They're in their house. They're in their bed chamber. They're in your bed. They're in your servant's house. They're on your people. They're in your ovens. They're in your kneading troughs. They're everywhere. You go open the microwave. They're in the microwave. Whatever you're looking at, there are frogs everywhere. Now, have you ever had frogs close to you, around you, in your house, or anything like that? They're hopping
in my house. No.
Okay. Can you imagine what your maybe your kids would be excited? Man, that might be pretty fun for your kids. They may be. How about your wife? Would she be excited to see these frogs in the house? My wife would be like, get these frogs out of here, and but they're everywhere. You walk down the street, there's frog after frog. We're not talking just 10 or 15. There are millions of frogs that are coming out of the Nile. And this is going all over Egypt and in the land of Goshen or Avaris. So there are frogs everywhere. So this thing that's supposed to be a blessing, this goddess of fertility that's supposed to be a blessing, has now become a curse. So I think that's and again,
I think it's kind of funny that they weren't allowed to kill them, and now they're everywhere.
And now they're everywhere. They want to kill them.
They're trying not to touch them.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I was looking this up, remember, again, I mentioned before that everybody's got different views on the gods and goddesses of Egyptian deities and things like that. Do you want me to leave this?
No, you can take it down. That's all I have.
On that?
That's all I have.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take it down. Anybody else who wants to take notes or whatever, they're going to have to go back, pause, and screen that. Okay, so first off, a lot of the Egyptologists were saying that Hapi is not only connected to the Nile, but is also connected to the frog goddess Hecate, and that they are both linked to fertility. Okay. Right. And then, interestingly enough, again, going back to Dr. Missick, who is very well studied in Egyptology, he said that when you're looking at the two different sets of the Egyptian deities, you've got the Aeneid and then you've got the Ogdoad, right? And the Ogdoad is made of 8. It's 4 males and 4 females. You have male and their counterparts. So you have your god and your goddess, right? Your lower G god, lower G goddess.
Right.
And that all of these were frog-headed of the Ogdoad. Okay, so it wasn't just Hecate, but it was also Nun and Nunet, and their identity was water.
Right.
You had Heh and Huhet, and their identity was infinity. You have Kek, K-E-K, right? Which Chadrick, I know Chadrick's talking. I see him in the live chat at the moment. He's talked about Kek, and him and I were actually going to do a video on that at one point, I think, and I think it got deleted. But he's probably done some stuff on Kek. You have Kek, and then you have Kauket. That's the goddess version. And their identity, according to Dr. Missick, is darkness. And then you have Amun, which was like their big god, right? And this is, and then you had Amunet. And then you've got the people who say that's where you get the word amen, which really means so be it. And then they say, oh, you can't say amen because of Amun. And they believe that the whole thing. Yeah, there's mirroring and everything. And if you find something defiled that's mirrored and you say, well, there's those who use the name Yahweh in a bad way, so I'm not going to use it at all. You start doing that with everything, you're going to end up with nothing. I can almost guarantee you.
You're going to be laying down in your bed every day doing shallow breathing, bro. That's all you're going to do.
Well, I'm just saying, we have these magicians doing a mirroring. So are we supposed to say that the miracles and the signs and wonders and the curses and plagues that Yah's doing are no good because the enemy has a mirroring version?
They were evil. God should have done that.
We see, and I was going to leave this for later, but we see in the book of Revelation, we see a couple entities doing signs and wonders, calling down fire and all these different things. Yeah. We've got frogs coming out of their mouth, Jeff, which is one of the things that you got the 3 frogs, and you've got whether or not that's a physical or just a metaphorical analogy, a sign of the spirit. But either way, the mention of the image, the symbol of a frog, is mentioned in Revelation. So I found that very interesting, and I wanted to bring that up. But yeah, Ket, Kaket, Amun, and Amunet, and they are connected identity for wind. So you have at least 9 gods and goddesses of Egypt deities that have frog heads. That you could easily say, okay, Heket was probably the main one that Yah would have been attacking. Somebody in the chat had earlier said, was it just the favorite gods of the Pharaoh? And I would say it was the most revered of that time.
That's what I think,
and that's why Yah's attacking them.
Because they did go through different variations of whom they held real sacred all the way through Egyptian history. But I think it was the ones that were in favor of the time, the big gods, if you will, for Egypt at the time.
Yeah, and just for anybody who's saying that it's okay, Chadwick is not going to let this go until we mention it. The Crossroads X is mirroring. He's saying that one of the goddesses we mentioned was the goddess of Crossroads. He's done a lot of studying on the whole X and the the symbol of the X and things like that. And most of my studies on the X had to do with the Tav. I think he was doing X and other things, but he was probably connecting to that as well. Okay. Anyways, I don't know if I said what you wanted me to say there, but I'm acknowledging it. Okay. But yeah, for anybody who wants to say that we're just parroting a theory that Yah was battling the gods of Egypt and that we're just trying to add things, or that we're theorizing, I would say Numbers 33:4. Okay, and I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go to that real quick before we forget to do that. Numbers 33, verse 4. For the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which Yahovah had smitten among them upon their gods. Also, Yahovah executed judgments. That's Numbers 33, verse 4. Exodus 12, verse 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Exodus 12, verse 12, which we'll go on again in a couple of videos. I will pass through the land of Mizraim this night and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Mizraim I will execute judgment. Yeah. I am Yahovah. Okay, so all of that to simply say this is not just a theory. There have been teachers, pastors, preachers who have said, I've got this theory, and they heard somebody else say it, and they're like, man, going through it, I do see that it's matching up with the gods it's matching up with the gods and the deities of Egypt and things like that. Yeah. And they'll say it was a theory because they've heard it and they see it, but they don't see. But the scripture literally tells us.
We are simply trying to expound on what you normally hear, being preached or taught from most pulpits. I never heard this when I was in the church. It wasn't until I started studying years later outside of the church, really understanding this massive judgment. And that's the thing. This is a judgment against not only the people of Egypt, not only against Pharaoh, but against these entities that have set themselves up as gods and had the people of Egypt worship them. This is a judgment against them too. So I think that's important.
Right. Yeah. I just wanted to bring up those verses because it shows it's not a theory.
Yeah.
It's not. Scripture literally tells us that Yah was executing judgment on the lowercase g gods of Egypt. And there's nothing about those verses that are saying that he's attacking the ideology, that he's attacking the beliefs of these gods. He's attacking entities, principles, powers of the air, princes, spiritual beings, actual and again, maybe somebody's rolling their eyes at me on this, but
that's what the scripture
is saying. It's what it's saying, Okay. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to get into the whole frog thing before we move forward. There is one thing, because we're going to have to mention this at some point, unless you want to go. Do you want to do this now or towards the end, talking about the secular atheistic view of Exodus, of how everything was a natural phenomenon and it was not actual supernatural?
Let's talk about that towards the end. Okay. I'm okay with that. But we do. There's a couple of things here that I think we stopped on verse 5, right? Is that where we stopped?
Let's see, where are we at? Yes. No, we stopped at 6 because I stopped right before the magicians were to mirror.
Yeah. So, okay, there we go. So, and then the verse 7, the magicians did the same in their secret arts and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. Again.
They're adding.
Yeah. But again, okay. Just again, I find it very interesting that the very first word, that it was something that they could show that they were doing, right? With the
Right.
with the staff. And that
Right.
was a different word. Man, I'm
Right.
all over this now, right? All right. Now this is a different word here used from there.
Right.
And if you already have frogs coming up, I mean, how are you going to show that you're doing something else, something the same way? I call shenanigans here again. And again, I don't know. I really want to get into verse 8. So that's
Okay.
yeah. I
All
want
right.
to get yeah.
Whether it was a sleight of hand, whether they're claiming credit for the frogs that they didn't bring up. It says they brought frogs up. I'm going to say that, Jeff. It does say that they brought them up. But either way, we got to laugh that, again, their answer by their deities is not to make the problem go away. It's not to solve the issue. It's not to make the water drinkable again. It's not to make the frogs die or go back to their home since they're sacred, but rather to add more to the problem.
Yeah.
There's already frogs everywhere. Yeah. Jeff, I mean, you already tried to paint the picture, but just one more time for the listener. Everywhere. It said in the house, in the ovens, everywhere you go, on your bed.
You go lay down, you pull the blanket back, there's frogs. There's frogs in your bed, man. You go to put your head on your pillow, there's a frog like under the pillow, like right there by your head. Everywhere. You go to the bathroom, right? There's a frog. There's a frog in the lavatory. There's a frog in the toilet. And there's a frog everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Open up your car door. There's a frog in your car, right? Or your chariot. I'm gonna go take my chariot to work. There's a frog in the chariot. There we go.
On the wheels, etc. Yeah. Adding to the chaos, like Chadwick says there, adding to the chaos. They're adding to the chaos because that's what they're able to do. That's what their magic allows. That's what their deities allow. It allows. They pray to these deities for protection and for blessings, and yet when it comes down to it, in the actual testing, all they can provide, at best, is black magic that adds to the chaos.
Adds to it, yeah.
Whether it's serpents or alligators or crocodiles or dragons, they get devoured up. If it's frogs, they get to multiply it. If it's other things, they multiply it. That's all they can do. They can add to. They can't take away, it seems, to the chaos. So Pharaoh calls for Moshe and Aharon and says, "Entreat Yahovah that he may take away the frogs from me." Okay, so we didn't see that with the blood Nile, did we?
No.
Interestingly enough, and from my people. Take it away from me and from my people. It doesn't say anything about the Israelites because he doesn't care, right? And I will let the people go that they may do sacrifice unto Yahovah. If you go and pray to Yahovah and have him take away the frogs from me and my people, which my gods cannot do, apparently.
That's right.
Then I will let your people go and they can go sacrifice.
Yep.
Okay. You said you wanted that verse, so I figured you wanted to stop there.
Well, the 8 and 9. I mean, they tie together, but yeah, this is,
okay.
Go ahead.
So Moshe says to Pharaoh, "Glory over me," and there's different ways of phrasing that there. "When shall I entreat for thee?" When do you want this to happen so you can see the sign? "For thy servants, for your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, that they may remain in the river only." Notice it says destroy there. So we're being shown what's going to happen. Moshe says, when do you want it to be shown so that you know?
Yeah. And he says, and of course, Pharaoh says tomorrow. Here, this is so important. I really think that we need to really kind of grab a hold of this, that God is giving Pharaoh the opportunity not only to get this changed that right then. I know there's some sermons out there, one more night with the frogs and different things like that. But God is actually saying, look, I'll do it according to your word. So there's no shenanigans going on. There's no other thing going on, but this is according to your word. And I think this is powerful. And I see that Pharaoh, just with this plague, Pharaoh's eyes are beginning to open. But how often is this like what we see in different places, that people's eyes begin to open, then something happens, and then they slam them shut again.
Sure.
He is going with the wind and the waves. He's not looking at God all the way. He's looking at God when it's convenient for him.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's willing to pray when he needs Yah, but he's not, ask not what Yah will do for you, but what you can do for Yah. That's not happening here, right?
Yeah. Hey, I'll be right back.
Okay. One of the things I was going to bring up is that, with the blood river, it said that the sign was so that Pharaoh would know that this is Yahovah. Now with this section here in verses 9 and 10, we're seeing it's not that he knows that it's him, but now that you may know that there's none like unto Yahovah, right? So this is not the exact same thing. This is adding to. Okay. So it shows that these are to be communicated to Pharaoh as well as the Egyptians and the rest of the world is something I'm going to argue here in a little bit. But specifically, what we're being told for Pharaoh, for his understanding, his perception, Yah is saying the water to blood was so that you would know I am Yahovah, and then with the frogs that you know that there's none like me. So moving to verse 11 here, the frogs shall depart from you, right? According to tomorrow, verse 10 there, as the Pharaoh said he wanted it the next day. So that you'll see that there's none like him. So the frogs shall depart from you, from your houses, from your servants, from your people, and they will remain in the river only, right? Because they came up out of the river. Again, symbolic there of coming up out of the river. So Moshe and Aharon went out to Pharaoh, and Moshe cried unto Yahovah because of the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And Yahovah did according to the word of Moshe, right? He's honoring his speech there, whatever Moshe said. Yah is going to honor it in this situation here. So the frogs died out of the house, out of the villages, and out of the fields, everywhere, right? And so now they have to gather them together up in heaps, and the land stank because, what Moshe said and what we see here is not that the frogs returned, they were destroyed, right? So again, bringing up that whole point that the frogs were considered sacred. Not only could they not kill them, but first Yah is showing them your gods that are not able to undo this and do not have control of the frogs, like they say. Right. Not only that, but instead of returning them back, I'm going to show you the frogs are not sacred, right? So he's attacking the gods here, but he's also attacking the idolatry of the frog themselves here by letting them die. He's also making them deal with the aftermath, right? So now they have to heap them up. They just died in their spot. Again, they didn't go to the river to die. They didn't all go to one field to die. They died where they were at. So now you got dead frogs in your house, in your oven, in your bathtub, if they have them, right? Everywhere, dead frogs, right?
Yeah.
I got that song in my head, I've been everywhere, man. There's frogs everywhere, man. You know what I mean? Like, but there's dead frogs everywhere.
Yeah.
So they're gathering them up in heaps, right? And the land stank. And Pharaoh saw that there was respite, right? And that right there, for anybody who's studying this first time or maybe even 50th time, if you haven't already, maybe this is a time to get the underlining out. Maybe this is the time to get the highlighter out. Because this is something we need to think about, not just for understanding Exodus with Pharaoh, but also with our own walk, our own hearts, and things of that nature. Look at this. Pharaoh sees that there's respite, and he goes back to hardening his heart, and he doesn't listen, right? This is after he said, now Pharaoh has said that he's going to let them go. This is the first time, get rid of the frogs. And Moshe says, okay, tell me when to do it. This is the first time Moshe says that. And Pharaoh says tomorrow, and it happens, and then there's a break. There's some time, there's some pause.
Yeah.
And that time allows him to say, you know what, that Yah is not all that powerful. So he made some frogs come up, and so he made them die. Maybe it was season for all the frogs to come up, and they were just extra. Maybe some of those frogs were even for my own magicians. I don't know. Yep. You allow your mind to start to doubt. How many times do you feel that you're given a sign or you believe that Yah is showing you something?
Right.
And then a little time passes and you forget it.
Well, and I think that's important. We see this pattern over and over and over again. We're going to start seeing this with Pharaoh. He sees something mighty, and then he goes back. Ooh. Signs and wonders are great, but at the same time, you still have to believe the word of Yah. So that I think that's one reason that I prefer seeing some things about the word of God than seeing some of the signs and wonders. Signs and wonders are great. They're supposed to point us to God, but they will not keep you with God. So if you base your relationship with God around signs and wonders, then you're always one sign wonder away from not believing. We have to have that foundational part on the word. I think that's important.
Yeah, well, we talked about this in the last video, talking about if you don't believe the word and you don't believe the signs, then all that's left is judgment, right?
Yeah. I just read Karen C's comment. I think that's funny.
Yeah, I put it on the screen there. It's smart though. You've got dead frogs in the ovens, and now the cooking is defiled there. At the very least until they clean it out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe Yah was pricking their hearts about, hey, what is that Egyptian food you're eating that you're not supposed to be eating? You know what I mean?
Right.
All kinds of things going on here. Okay. I think we might be ready to move on from the frogs. Are you ready to move on from frogs?
I'm ready to move on from the frogs. Yep.
Okay.
Again, I still find it interesting. Yah says to Pharaoh through Moses, when do you want to get rid of the frogs? He could have got rid of them that night.
Yeah.
But he said, hey, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we need to get across to ourselves. Yah is saying today is the day, right, of our salvation. We're not talking about tomorrow. God wants to deliver us today. God wants to bring us out today. We we serve a God of the living, the God of the now, and so I think that's something to kind of look at. Sometimes we put God way off out in the future. God, I'm looking for healing. I don't need it right now. I'll suffer through, but I'll look for healing later, or I'll look for my financial blessing later, or I'll look for some deliverance later. God wants to do those things today, now in your life. I think that's important.
Okay, so moving on from the frogs,
Yep.
Yahovah says to Moshe, say unto Aharon, stretch out thy rod, smite the dust of the land that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Okay, so before we continue there in this little short section, there are differing views on what this lice is, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So some say it's lice, some say it's gnats.
Some say it's a dust storm.
Right. There's different views, but either way, one thing we can say, Jeff, this is Egypt. And the dust of the land is being animated.
Everywhere.
Jeff, how much dust is in the land of Egypt?
Oh, my gosh.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, so my mother-in-law lives in, I'm not going to give the state or anything like that, but there's a certain state in the south that she lives in where there's a lot of red clay.
Yeah.
And if you were to turn like normal dirt into something, it would not affect. But if you were to say, and all the red clay will turn into this, let me tell you, it would affect that area because it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there thinking like, dust is everywhere in Egypt. I'm assuming, Jeff, I see my mom's been to Egypt. I haven't been to Egypt. I've been to Iraq and I've been to Kuwait and stuff like that. I'm not going to make assumptions because everybody calls Iraq, they call it the sandbox, and yet there's not actually all that much sand like people think. So I'm not going to make any assumptions here, but from pictures and things like that, Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and hazard a guess that there is a lot of dust in the land of Egypt. And if it says that he smote the dust of the land, that it might become lice, that we are talking to the point where you can't breathe in without things are going into your mouth and into your lungs.
Yeah.
It's in your eyes. It's in your hair. It's in your ears. It's in your beard. It's uncomfortable.
Everywhere.
I mean, a lot of Egyptians aren't going to have beards, but the Israelites, some of them, right? So, I mean, I just wanted to get that picture in there. This is very uncomfortable, whatever this is, right?
Yeah.
And they did so. So Aharon stretches out his hand with his rod, smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man. It says, in man and in beast. So it shows that it's messing with mankind and beast, right? Whatever this is. And all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Mitzrayim. And what do the magicians do, Jeff? And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, right? So they went to add to it. Why not? We've already got storms of whatever this is, and everybody's uncomfortable. Nobody will notice, but the Pharaoh will notice, and that's all we need, right?
Yep.
But they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They could not do it, Jeff. So there were lice upon man and upon beast, and the magicians were not able to mirror. Okay, next verse. Then the magicians say unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of Elohim. This is the finger of God.
Yeah.
Jeff, now they're like, okay.
We can't do this. Yeah.
We can't even mirror this. Forget fixing things, right? So Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as Yahovah has said.
Yeah. So the God here that's being judged is the God Geb. And he
Geb
is
or Seb. There's two different ways of saying that.
Yeah. There are some people that say Seb. I kind of go with the Geb. That I guess more popular view, but God of Geb, and he was the God of the earth. He was a very lazy kind of God. I think the pictures that we have of him in Egyptology, his sister is like the God of the cosmos type thing, of the stars, and she's pictured kind of hovering over him. We've got the Kanum kind of in between them, trying to keep them apart from each other. And then we've got Geb just kind of hanging out below, just being real lazy. And here we have Geb. He's the God of the dust. He's the God of the earth. And literally, Yahovah is taking his territory and turning it into gnats or lice. And they are getting everywhere. Again, all the dust of the land became gnats or lice, however you look at it, throughout the land of Egypt. The magicians tried this with their secret arts to bring forth the gnats, but they could not. I think that is amazing. I've never personally had lice, but I've had gnats all around me. No, I've never had lice.
No?
Never had lice. My daughter had lice years ago. Had to chop off some of her hair, unfortunately, because she has real thick hair. But I've been around gnats.
That's not fun either.
Yeah, hunting up in northeast Texas in the piney woods up there. Listen, you think of Texas, you think of like a desert area. This is more like southeast Louisiana. It's real tropical, real humid. You've got gnats just all around your ears. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And man, I that's the image that I get here. Whether or not it's lice, whether or not it's gnats, either one is enough just to drive you nuts. After a little bit, you're trying to find some relief. You're trying to get away from this, but like you so eloquently pointed out, this everywhere is dust. This whole place is dust.
Yeah,
And now
man.
this dust has become this gnats or this lice everywhere. And we don't get a whole lot about this, but we do see an amazing thing that the magicians tried to do this and they could not.
Right. And I can back up what Karen's saying about the Egyptians being fastidious about hygiene. And I'm going to add to that, because the notes that I was going to bring up is not just the Egyptians in general, but their priests, their magicians, their sorcerers, and things like this. Yep. There was a high standard for cleanliness, just like how, I mean, not in the same way, but like you have your priests of the Israelites, and in most faiths and religious systems and things like that, your priests, your preachers, your teachers, and things like this are held to a different standard. Lice would make the priest and the mages of the Egyptians considered unclean. And their ritualistic cleansing processes were an issue. Okay, so I got a couple notes, and then I'm gonna have to walk away, and you're gonna have to take the screen for a minute. One of the notes is that lice and gnats are the most common, but there are those looking back at it that say it could have been sand flies. Okay, which brings in some other things, because sand flies, well, you're looking at not just pests, but you're looking at actually having an effect. So when it talks that it's bothering man and beast, now you're looking at some actual sores and things, some bites and things like that. Very uncomfortable. Anybody who's ever dealt with that, especially in desert regions, sandflies are not fun. I haven't had to deal too much with sandflies, but I have had to deal with sandstorms, to the point where I had no idea until I had an experience with that. And if you want, I can get into that when I get back. But Chpt is the insect god, and he is often also mentioned. He's a creator god, and he's rebirth, but he's also considered the insect god. Chpt is one of the names that people say, hey, yeah, this would be about Seb or Geb the most, but Chpt would also be getting poked at here, that he's not able to do anything about this, and he's the insect god. And we're definitely dealing with insects, whether it's sand flies, lice, or gnats, or anything like that. Josephus said that the priests tried and couldn't. Not only could they not reproduce and mimic, but they couldn't destroy the lice or the gnats. And Josephus uses the word vermin, and he says that they tried with all their washes and ointments, and no matter what they tried, they could not become clean. So again, Josephus is really honing in on that issue of the cleanliness and versus the uncleanliness of the priests of the Egyptians at that time. Okay, I got a couple other things to say, but I'm going to let you take it. Did you want your slide up, Jeff?
Yeah, pull the slide up. Yep.
Okay, and you're able to move it around, right, if you need to?
Yep.
Okay, I'll be right back.
All right, so there we go, guys. We've got this plague of the frogs. Now we're coming into this of the lice. I just want to let me pull this up on my end so I can see a little bit better. Hang on one second. So we had this god of Geb, all right, or Keb, or a Seb, I think is what we talked about. And I agree. I think this is an important thing to kind of look at. We have this God that is supposed to be the God of the dust, the God that created all the earth. And so when we see this dust becoming lice or the gnats, it's on people and on beast. And this very dust that was referred to the creation process is now used as a plague of man. And that is wild, because what we're seeing here, again, these gods are being judged. This God was supposed to be the life-giving dust of the earth, right? And instead of that life-giving dust, now it's becoming death. And we see this, that they cannot mimic it. Not only can they not mimic it, but they can't take it away. And in them not being able to take it away, they are now becoming unclean. And we're going to see this in a couple times coming up, where the magicians can't even come back up before Pharaoh because now they are deemed unclean. So that's very interesting. So I talked about Chpt being in with the next group, but I can also bring him up in this one as well. Let me get back over to it.
Yeah, Kefri would go with both.
Yeah, Kefri can definitely go with both. And let me just so I've got this slide up, and I just want to talk about Kefri. Kefri is very interesting. I think you can see it pretty good. I blew the picture up on the right so you can see it, but he has the face of a beetle, right? And so one of the things that he was supposed to do, he was the god of creation. He's the god of movement of the sun, of rebirth. One of the things that Kefri would do is he would move the sun up, right? And so that was part of his job, just like kind of like a dung beetle moving, pushing that ball around. That's the idea that we get here. And wow, this God is the God of rebirth. He's the God of flies, all these kind of things. We can talk a little bit more about him maybe also in the next one. But again, this God of lice, this plague of lice, this plague of gnats, however you want to look at it, they could not duplicate this.
No, they couldn't.
Yeah, and with them being unclean, now they're not even able to present themselves before Pharaoh. We're going to start seeing some of this come out, and I think that's important. But you said you had something to bring out.
Do you want me to leave the screen up here? Is anybody?
No, I'm good. That's really all I wanted to do.
Yeah, Kathy, I was going to bring that up in a second. We'll be moving to the flies in a minute here. But yeah, with the lice, I already talked about Josephus, right?
Yep.
And I already talked about you have the different gods with that and things. The uncleanliness of the priests. I think that was the main thing that really stuck out to me that I really wanted to emphasize, along with the emphasizing again that this is Israelites as well.
Right.
So you have uncomfortability all the way around. I mean, we really need to think about these things when we're reading this. Okay,
think of this all together. I mean, all of a sudden you've had this. At the beginning of the month, you had the water turning into blood, not red dye, turning into blood. It stinks. We read the one account of an Egyptian that if you drank of it, you'd lose your humanity.
Yeah.
Right. Next thing we've got coming up, we've got the frogs coming up on the land, right?
Yeah.
Think of what's going on in your mind, right? You've got, and then all of a sudden, followed by that, then all of a sudden, okay, it says that God destroyed them. We don't know how that happened, but can you imagine you're sitting there? What if there was a pop with every one of them?
Oh man,
so like,
I hadn't even thought about that.
Right?
That'd be great.
Yeah, what's going on, and how does God destroy these things? Can you imagine? Is there a big mess? Is there a big pile of goo? What are you having to clean up, right? And then all this lice or these gnats come upon you.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's going on in the mind of the average Egyptian? That's where I like to try to put myself. I mean, at least the Israelites had some warning that this was coming on, because they'd already been talked to by Moses and Aaron. But man, the Egyptians, they're like, what is going on? I don't know. That's amazing. Of course, and then they're praying to their gods. They had idols, and they're praying with fervency. They're praying with fervency to their gods. They're praying to Kefri. Kefri, clear up this lice. They're praying to Hecate, get rid of these frogs. They're praying to all these things. And then all of a sudden, all these, I don't know. I think that they are overwhelmed. Just think about the things that we have been going through in our lifetime right now in the last 2 years, amped up. Can you imagine that? Just all this happening within a month, and you're thinking, wow, I think that's overwhelming. All the way.
Yeah. And you're not able to kill the frogs because they're sacred, and then they die anyhow.
It's just exploding everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, are we ready to move on from gnats or lice or sandflies?
Yep.
Okay. So they weren't able to do it, and then that's when they recognize that it's Yah, right? They're like, okay, yeah, no, this is not just any god. This is the God. Let's stop playing with him, right?
Yep.
All right, 8 verse 20, Yahovah says unto Moshe, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. Again, it's in the morning, right? Early in the morning. Come forth to the water and say to him, thus saith Yahovah, let my people go, that they may serve me. Again, serve me. And again, the emphasis is let my people go, being said by Yahovah. Right? That there's a reason why this is being phrased this way. Again. Okay, so verse 21, else if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon you and upon your servants, upon your people and their houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, the ground whereon they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end that thou may knowest that I am Yahovah in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And Yahovah did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and to servants' houses, and in all the land of Egypt, the land was corrupted by the reason of the swarm of flies. Okay, we're going to pause there. Yeah. So earlier, while you were stepped out for a second, I pointed out with the Nile and the water turning blood, Moshe said to Pharaoh, had Aaron say to Pharaoh, this is so that you may know he's Yahovah. And then when it came to the frogs and getting rid of the frogs, it was so that you may know that, what was it? That you may know that there is none like Yahovah, right? So first is to know that there's Yahovah, that there's none like Yahovah. Then there's not a comment like that with the lice, gnats thing, but you have the magicians now saying to the Pharaoh, hey, there's none like him. This is him, right? And then with the flies now, you have him saying, so that you may know that Yahovah is in the midst of the earth. So, hey, now you know who I am. You know that there's none like me. You know that even your magicians recognize me. And now you know I'm in your midst. Yes. Right? So each of these come with heavier, deeper messages.
Deeper and deeper revelation of who Yahovah is.
Right. And so you do have the whole Beelzebub, the fly god, right? The Lord of the Flies. I saw some people mentioning that up in the chat. Right. That was one of the things I was going to bring up. It kind of brings to mind the whole President O, who was often depicted as a pharaoh. Do you remember that? In Times Magazine, they would have him with the pharaoh, and then they had him as all these other destroyer gods. They had him as Shiva and all these other destroyers. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, but you remember that whole weird thing with President O and the Lord of he had those interviews and he had flies that wouldn't go away, and they said there was people that were around him that said the flies wouldn't bother them, but they would bother him, and it was real odd, interesting stuff. And wasn't it? It was President O as well that went to visit Egypt, and he had that video. Did you ever see it where he walked in and before he even turned to look, he pointed as if he'd been there before, and said, "Hey, look at this guy," and it was a drawing that looked very much like him. Yeah. I'm not trying to get too much into the whole President O conspiracies and stuff like that. I'm just saying, there's some odd things there that come to mind.
There are some odd things. Amen.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to mention about flies, because this is the last one for the night, the last plague of the night.
We're doing good. It's almost 3 hours. We're doing
good, Jeff. I know you and I both have our things, and yet we're doing right as what we were hoping would be the case. So that's awesome. Yeah. So with the water turning to blood, you have issues of the source. You have issues of liveliness. You have issues of economy, right? With the license stuff, again, uncomfortability with frogs. You've got the uncleanliness, and you've got the sacred issue. But with flies, okay, it's flies that Yah chose to have stick to the stink and not to the Israelite.
Right.
Beth, it's flies that Yah chose to decide to now draw a severance line.
Yes.
Right? How much easier would it have been for the Egyptian or even the Israelite that wants to doubt to think, to not connect the two as sovereignty of Yah if the frogs seem to not be bothering the Israelites as much? These are flies, Jeff. How can you control where flies go, Jeff? That's what I'm getting at. These are flies, Jeff. They go wherever. And I don't know about you, Jeff. You brought up lice and stuff. I've had lice before, and I did the gasoline in the hair. And then a couple of years later, my sister had to deal with it. And at that time, between the time where I had to have kerosene in my hair, my mom found out you could use mayonnaise. So my sister didn't have to put gasoline in her hair and have her scalp burned, but I did, right? It was real perfect timing on that. But when I was in Iraq, I remember thinking that flies were one of the things that you had to learn to ignore. Okay. And I was a machine gunner. And I spent a lot of time in towers. Right. Okay. So I was constantly in the open air. I mean, even though you have the opening at the top of the Humvee, the guys underneath me, the driver, the dismount, the TC, the team chief, and things like that, they didn't have to deal with flies, but one or two. And Jeff, I had flies in my face nonstop. And when I was in Iraq, and I was over there for more than 2 years, Jeff. And so I got to tell you, I have a little bit of an understanding of what it's like to have flies in your front. You ever watch like National Geographic and you see they're constantly doing this? They got they got those scripts with the horse tail. Yeah. And they're constantly having to do this. I mean, look at Yah's creation. You've got elephants and giraffes and stuff. You go to the zoo even, or you're watching safari on whatever. What are they constantly doing with their tail, Jeff?
Getting rid of flies.
Because it's uncomfortable, because it's
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
And like, just because they're not biting. And the thing with a fly, it'll go and come back. It'll go and come back. You could have one fly in your house and it will land on you 5 times in one day. It's got the whole house to roam at, but it still wants to come bother you, right, Jeff? Well, this is a land with a swarm of flies.
Yeah.
That are persistent.
We just watched some kind of a documentary where this guy was in like the bush of South America or maybe Australia or somewhere. I forget where it was at. And he was going to grab something. And when he grabbed something, you could see, I'm trying to put my hand up here. You could see like in this little small section, there was like 10 flies because it was just really bad right there. And I got to thinking about this very scripture. Like, wow, is this what it was like for that guy? But all over, flies are just everywhere. Can you imagine opening your mouth? And I was preaching a revival in Arkansas one time, and it was at night, and it was an open air, and I'm preaching away, man. I'm shucking some corn. And I've got the microphone back, and I'm starting to say something, and right in my mouth, a fly all the way down, and I'm just doing that. But can you imagine? You're trying to breathe, you're trying to sleep, you're trying to do all these things, and you can't do anything because of the flies. Everywhere, in your ears, getting in your nose, in your eyes.
And
you already know this, right?
Yes, Jeff. I learned to just deal with it. That's how bad it was in Iraq. Because there's flies everywhere. I learned to just deal with it. I would always have a cigar or a cigarette, and I'd have my machine gun, and you'd have them land, and I learned I didn't have time, Jeff, to be doing this. I had to have my hand on my machine gun. I didn't have time. So I had to learn to just deal with it. And even after 2 years of doing it, you would think you would just be able to like put it out of your mind.
Yeah.
Not so much. Oh, dude, they were everywhere. So yeah, where's Beelzebub, Jeff? Where's the Lord of the Flies showing his power here, Jeff?
Right.
This is the time where Yah is saying, okay, you want to step in the ring? You want to compare powers of entities? Of the princes of the airwaves and things of that nature. Where are they at, Jeff?
Just crickets.
Silent.
Or I should say flies, but crickets. Yeah, nothing going on.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the crickets are later, right? Even though it's not crickets. Right. So Beelzebub is nowhere to be heard in terms of power and things like that. Jonathan Jambres of 2 Timothy 3:8 have nothing to say at this point, right?
Well, and I love how he says in verse 23, I will put division between my people and your people. Tomorrow, this sign will happen. Yeah. Tomorrow, this is going down. Yeah. Get ready. This is when it's going to happen. And that is, you can't, it's not like, okay, here in the next month or so, this is going to happen. He's not saying that, some people try to say, okay, well, all the frogs died, so the flies came next, right? That obviously the flies are coming on all the dead carcasses and all this. You know what? They didn't go to Goshen. They didn't go to up to where the Israelites were at. This did not happen there, but they still had the frogs up in Goshen, right? Yeah. So it's not just a natural phenomenon going on, and I think that's something to point out as well. Is that God used this to set apart Israel, and wow, what an amazing thing! If I was an Egyptian and I start seeing this stuff, man, I'm moving to Goshen. I'm getting out of here. You know what I mean?
Well, as we'll see at the end of the series here, there's a mixed multitude that leaves Mitzrayim.
Converts. Amen.
It's not just Israelites. It's not just Hebrews that leave that place. Amen. So we got to keep that in mind as well. And you got to remember too, the rest of the world is watching. Jeff, Yah is doing this to fight the deities. Yah is doing this to show Pharaoh. Yah is doing this to show the Egyptians, and Yah is doing this to show Moses, Aaron, and the Israelites. And there is verses to back every single thing that I just said right there. But if you want to look at it, Joshua 2.
I was just fixing to bring up Joshua. Go ahead.
They send in the spies to talk to Rahab, and what does she say? We are familiar with your Yahovah. Right. We've heard of what he's done, referring to the land of Egypt. Okay. Yeah. When they saw them cross the Jordan River, they're like, oh crap.
They're like freaking out.
Yeah. And they see that Jordan River and they're thinking Reed or Red Sea. Right. And they're thinking, crap, right before that was the ending of that one. And now he's starting out again. We're the next Egypt.
Yeah, it says
Jericho was
great,
looking at it, going, "We're the next Mitzrayim."
yeah, it says great dread came upon them. I think that's the way the King
Yeah,
James says that.
yeah. Verse 8 and 9 is talking about them shaking in their boots, real hardcore, Jeff.
Yeah,
I don't know if they had Texas boots, but if they did, they were shaking in them.
they did, brother. They picked them up at Boot Town. There we go.
1 Samuel 4 verse 8, real quick. 1 Samuel 4 verse 8. Philistines, right? They're bringing out the ark and they're screaming out, and this is where they have the idolatry of the ark. They're bringing out the ark because they have idolatry of it, not because Yah told them to. And in verse 8, the Philistines say, "Woe unto us, who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods, these Elohim? Yeah. These are the Elohim that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness." Okay, so the whole world is watching, the whole world's watching, the whole world remembers, and yet it's the Israelites that Yah keeps having to tell them, "Hey, remember what I did for you in Exodus."
I brought you out.
It's the Christians today. It's the Torah observant today. The Hebrew, whatever you want to identify yourself as, if you consider yourself to be a believer and a follower of the God of the Bible, the message for you today is remember Exodus. And it's us that Yah feels he has to remind.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's kind of sad, Jeff, when the Philistines seem to remember better than Israelites.
Well, you know, the scripture says that the demons know the word. They know who God is.
Shake and tremble.
And they shake and tremble. Yeah. And we get mad and beat our chest at God. I'm mad at you and all that. Yeah. Kathy wins. Stiff-necked people. Absolutely. Yeah. That's good stuff.
If you look at Exodus 18, when Moshe is talking to Jethro, Jethro says, "Now I know that Yahovah is greater than all the gods, for in this thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them." Above them, talking about the gods of Egypt.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the context there, you'll see why I'm saying that. I'm not going to read all of chapter 18.
So, you know, go back to the beginning of this. Egypt is the largest. Egypt is pretty much the only superpower right now in the world. Yeah. You know, there's some things that are up and coming, but right now at this period, they're huge.
I mean, you've got some big things. You have Hittites and things like that, but at the end of the day, Egypt was Egypt, baby. You know what I mean? Like, man.
Yeah. They've got these souped up chariots, you know. The Egyptian chariots were amazing technology of what they had compared to what everybody else had. This was like Top Gear stuff. This was amazing things. Their spears were all their weaponry was advanced. I mean, everything was advanced. This was the place, and now they're literally being brought to their knees. So we've had economic collapse. We've had with the fish dying. You've had these plagues come in with the lice and the flies and the frogs. What is going on with the psyche of the average Egyptian? Man, I am.
The economy is being destroyed, Jeff, step at a time, and with each plague, it is worsening, and we're going to see that in next week's videos. We're going to be really honing in on how each plague. If they were to turn and repent like Nineveh, there's certain plagues that would destroy so much, but left just enough remnant that you could reboost the economy. And there's studies out there, maybe we'll be able to go into it a little bit about how much time it would take. And with each plague, the time to bounce back gets worse. And the remnant that was left from plague number 5 gets taken out by 6, and the remnant left behind for plague 6 gets taken out by plague 7, and it's constantly like that from this point forward. And I think that's also one of the reasons why you see the drawing of the line here. Okay, so real quick, Revelations versus Exodus 7 and 8. Moshe and Aaron in Exodus. Revelations has 2 witnesses.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And they're calling out signs and wonders. I mean, let's remember in your little thing there, it's talking about the water to blood. It had Revelations 8 and it had Revelations 16, right? Yeah. But I didn't see Revelations 11:6 there. And Revelations 11:6 said the 2 witnesses had the power to do that. Yep. So I had that in my notes and I noticed it wasn't in there. So I thought I'd bring that up. You've got the wicked performing signs and wonders in both. In Exodus, you've got the first 2, 3, right? You've got the staff, you've got the water, and you've got frogs, right? So you got 3 that the magicians, the sorcerers of Egypt can do. Well, in Revelations, chapters 13 to 15, basically, you constantly see parading of the wicked calling down fire and doing great signs and wonders, all kinds of things. They're
Yeah.
making an image speak, whatever that means.
Right.
And there's all kinds of things that you and I can speculate and talk about. And I know you've studied this like I have. So,
Amen.
and we probably have different views on it. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can consider there. But either way, signs and wonders by Yah, signs and wonders by wicked. You've got the water to blood in both. You've got satanic frogs in Revelation 16, verse 13. And now that we finally got to the bottom of chapter 8, we can also say Yah protecting his. And Revelations chapters 7, 12, 14 to 16, you're constantly seeing the protection of the believer. You have the sealing of the forehead. The dispensationalists will say, oh, that's 144,000 Jews. I would say that's a dispensational error. But we'll leave that at simply that.
I think dispensationalism by itself is an error, but go ahead, brother.
I agree, Jeff. But if you want to get into that more, we can definitely do that next weekend because we have all kinds of examples. Remember, this is the beginning of the dividing of the line. Remember, the Israelites are called to be holy, and the word holy is what, Jeff?
Set apart. Set apart. Amen.
Right. So look at judgment starts at the house of Yah. So the Israelites deal with a few, but they didn't deal with the hardest ones, did they? They got some judgment. But not hardcore. And we get to the flies and the line is drawn, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was more for the Egyptians than it was for the Israelites. I mean, you do have the sanity's sake, but if you're the Israelite, hey, I would have rather had the flies than my water turned to blood. You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to remember this too. And this is something that should be forefront in our minds all throughout the study. Before we end this out, I want to mention this. This whole book of Exodus is about deliverance.
Yes.
It is not about making life better. It is not about making life more comfortable. This is not about, Yah did not come and make it more comfortable for them in Egypt.
Right.
He called Moshe out, sanctified him, brought him back. He called Israel out, called them for sanctification to move them forward into his promised land.
Yeah.
And what's he doing with us today, Jeff?
Same thing. And there's a crucible to go through. There's a refining that they had to go through. There's a judgment. Everybody talks about we want revival. We want we want all this, but there has to be that judgment. There has to be that repentance. There has to be that time of coming before Yah and getting ourselves cleaned up in Him. We have to cry out as a body. Create in me a clean heart, renew that right spirit in me. Those have to be our heart's cry. And here we see that God is getting His people ready to move out. He's getting His people ready to receive. But just like we talked about last week in the show, there's some things that that Moses had to do in his own family before he could go into some spiritual warfare. Right? God is going through and doing some judgment on Israel to help them move to the next level. So it's not all on the mountaintop. There's yea that I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Right? We're not building a camp and staying there in the shadow in that valley, but we're going through. If we want to be on the mountaintop, we have to go through the wilderness, the valley, and that's what I think that we're seeing right here. Is God's preparing His people. Every time we see great revival, we also see great persecution. The times that we don't see great revival is the time that we see where the church or the body, the ecclesia, gets fat and lazy, like Laodicea. Comfortable. That's right.
Complacent.
We think that we're rich. We think that we have all this, but Yeshua says, nope, you're not rich. You're blind. You're naked. You're miserable. You're all these things. And this is a picture that we get. So I get excited when we start seeing the judgment of Yah coming on the body, and I think that we've been seeing that for quite a few years. We're starting to see that more and more
worldwide.
We're seeing it with ministers being judged. We're seeing it with people in the body being judged. These secret sins that are out there that people think that they're getting by with, they're not. God will still use people while they're in their sin. We see constant examples of that. David and Samson and everybody else. God, there's no perfect vessel. Amen. There's no perfect vessel. But at the same time, we need to have a repentant heart, just like David did. David messed up many, many times, but he always was coming back to God. That was his habit. He wanted to be with God. Even if he messed up, he still wanted to be with God. And that Israel, they've walked away from God. They've mixed themselves, right? Maybe we could get into that. There's a mixing of that linen and wool. There's a mixing of that going on. There's a mixing going on, and God is now beginning to separate them out. God is beginning to draw those lines out and pull them out, just like we're called to come out of Babylon. He's calling them out of Egypt right now, and that's what God is calling us out of. And sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes there's things that'll make you uncomfortable, just like they had to go through here. And listen, it was just as uncomfortable for the Egyptians as it was for the people that were in Goshen or Avaris. And man, what an amazing thing going on where I love this. This is the first of the plagues that does not touch the land of Goshen or the Israelites.
I know it.
That's
and it's perfect timing too. Like I said, I like how it's the flies. I think that's so cool. Yep. You know, and I'm thinking out of all of the plagues, this one is real funny. It's like a flicking of the ear. Like Yah's just constantly flicking the ear of the Pharaoh, because this is not something that like hits the economy real bad and all those things, but it's in your face nonstop. It seems little, but it you know they do those psychological studies, right? And they'll try to break a person. They try to see, and they'll do big things and stuff like that, and then they'll have like dripping water in the background.
Oh yeah,
and you think it's like whatever, but then after a while, it makes you lose your mind because it's consistently, persistently flicking your ear nonstop. And that's the visual I get with the flies. Yah's just flicking the ear of the Pharaoh, and that's when he chose to draw the line. Okay, so I only have a couple notes left. I mean, we hit almost all my notes. We see hearts hardening and waxing cold due to sin in Revelation. Specifically, we can see verses like chapter 9, verse 20-21. So that's another connection of Revelation and Exodus. There is a Egyptian fly god. Their version of a Beelzebub. It was called like you hatch it.
There's a couple different pronunciations. There's also one that starts with a W.
Are you talking about Wadjet?
Yeah,
Wadjet was more of the snake. I actually wanted to get into that. Real quick, for anybody who actually watched the whole, or maybe somebody who hasn't watched the whole video and is planning on going back and listening to us from 3 hours ago, we talked about the rods of Aaron, the rod of Aaron versus the rods of the magicians.
She is a cobra goddess.
If you're in the camp of it was a Nakash and not a Tanim, if you believe it was a serpent and not a dragon or crocodile or something like that, then you can look at the Wadjet, right, and how that has to do with that was the goddess of protection of Lower Egypt and was a serpent goddess. Wadjet is actually the reason why you have a snake projecting from the third eye, the pineal gland of the Pharaoh, showing what is constantly in their spiritual mind. What is, again, going back to like the whole Kundalini thing, right? And the connections there with like yoga. Anybody who's a believer, if you're involved with yoga, I would strongly suggest you prayerfully consider not being a part of yoga anymore. If you look at the background of yoga, what it is called to do, is to bring the Kundalini spirit up from the bottom chakra all the way up, and you're trying to raise a spiritual serpent, right? That's supposed to enter you from an orifice, right, and go up your spine to the point where it reaches your third eye, your pineal gland, so that it's ever in your mind, heart, and soul, right, Jeff? Yep. I've studied this out, and I know I'm saying this in a way that they would not say that, but that's succinctly put. Would you disagree with what I just said?
No, I agree, and that's we see that really overtaking or being embraced by a lot of the church today, and then at the same time we see it being embraced, but then we have some people that. I just want to say this. We did a video on the Kundalini spirit versus the Holy Spirit, and where we kind of go through and talk about, because we see some people now saying that everything supernatural of God that we see today, that's Kundalini. So I think people can get overbalanced in that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There is a real power of God, then there's a fake, and just because there's a fake doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to operate in the real. And I think that we see a lot of cessationalists really jump on board with this Kundalini and say, oh, everything's Kundalini. and then we get way out, and then people will say, oh well, tongues isn't real. That's all Kundalini. Healing's not real. That's all Kundalini. There's all someone getting excited and really worshiping God. Oh, that's Kundalini. No.
Right.
David danced out of his clothes. Come on, I mean, we can get all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a real.
No, it's good. It's good. There's some goofy stuff that is considered charismatic, and then there are those who want to label all of the charismatics and everything they do as goofy, and that's not right either.
Right.
Again, you have the pendulum swing. You have those who are accepting everything that is considered charismatic, which isn't the case for all the people in those categories.
Right.
It's just it's just like any other movement or any other group or any other belief. There are going to be those who say they believe the same thing as you do, and then you talk to them and you find out they do not.
They don't.
And then somebody hears you and that person put yourself under that same label, and in their mind, this is why atheists, they think of Christians as Catholics.
Right.
And everything that they know from Catholicism, they go, oh, I already know how your religion there's no way that you should be connecting Catholicism with what is considered churchianity or Christianity, let alone what is considered biblical. It becomes an unfair association. But again, the person, every individual, every soul, every spirit is accountable of themselves to be seeking the Creator on what is true and what is not. We all have the ability, we all have the option to seek him. Whether you're deaf, blind, mute, spiritually, physically, whatever, it doesn't matter who you are, you have the option.
Yeah.
And if you go to the end of your life choosing not to seek him, you will be held accountable for that. It is what it is. If you push him to the point where you say, I want nothing to do with you, go away, and at some point he's going to allow you to do that. And if you do that to your last breath, you're going to get exactly what you asked for.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
I'm just gonna say before I keep ranting, because I'll keep going, Jeff, and we're at the end point here.
Yeah.
You got something you were gonna say before?
No, I'm good, brother. I'm good.
So the only thing, and I don't want to get too much into this now, but I do find it interesting, and maybe we can discuss it next week in the 2 videos. In the Old Kingdom of Egyptology, the deities and other individuals and their hieroglyphs and in their writings and documentation and things like this, they have beings that are fully animal walking around.
Right.
Okay, the crocodiles and things like this. Middle Kingdom, you don't see that anymore, but you see the heads.
Just the heads.
And sometimes it's the deities, and sometimes, according to their own documentation and literature, it's not deities, but rather offspring. So when you start considering hybridization, Nephilim, all kinds of things, I know there might be 1 or 2 or a few people listening in that are rolling their eyes, and it is what it is. This is not a hill I'm going to die on. I'm just saying, for those who can receive it, who are already familiar with it, who've already prayed and studied this out, and they've noticed that there is proof outside of just writing on paper, but actual skeletal proof of all kinds of things of this. I thought I'd bring that up because I was listening to a video. I think I sent one to you, Jeff.
Oh, I really like that.
And he said, okay, a lot of people talk about it being just depicted and it's painted and that's supposed to show things and it's masks and it's headdress. Did you know there is not one of these headdress or masks that have been found? And the plethora of Egyptian relics. We don't have that Anubis. I'm not talking about the occultic, ritualistic stuff that's made to this day. I'm talking about the stuff that was used by the pharaohs, supposedly. Right. I'm talking about the ones that you actually see in the hieroglyphs. Those
don't see them.
Head masks or headdress, if that's what they were, we don't have them. Where are they?
Zero.
Jeff, if they were masks and headdress, what happened to them?
And we're talking we're not talking about something that was just maybe handed down over maybe a couple hundred years. This is thousands of years of Egypt history where these things would have been used a lot. They would have been wearing these things out. So there would have been a ton of these things. Where are they at? And we have zero evidence of these things being used as a headdress. So you already know where I stand on this stuff.
I know you know where I stand too, but I know of at least one listener that's going to not like that we said that, and it is what it is. Listen, we do these videos, and it's not meant to please or to be appreciated and enjoyed by everybody. And I say this with this is not an emotional thing, okay? For the people who listen in, I'm assuming and hoping and expecting that if you're listening in, it's because you gain and enjoy it.
Sure.
I have zero problems, Jeff, with anybody who says, you know what, this is not my cup of tea. There are lots of amazing teachers and preachers out there, some with a lot more years and experience than I, with more knowledge and understanding. They have some things that I cannot bring to the table. I have zero problems. Go to where you feel that the Father is leading you. Go to where you feel that you are gaining spiritually. If this is not the show, if this isn't the channel that you're, if my show, because there's lots of shows on Take on the World, and I'm not talking about the other ones. I'm talking if my show doesn't seem to do it for you, if you feel more annoyed than not, if you feel you're not gaining from it, then please do not feel that out of support or whatever else that you need to. I would rather anybody who listens in, it's because they gain from it. And if you're not going to gain from it, go where you go. I'm not saying one of those enjoy it or get out. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I wouldn't want anybody to listen that doesn't want to listen. Can I just say that?
Yeah. Well, and just be one with an open mind. I mean, there are things that you and I disagree on, but at the same time, man, I'm open to hearing what you have to say, because I know that I don't know it all. I know that, the Pharisees, the Sadducees were supposed to be the most learned people of their day, and they missed Yeshua.
Yeah.
Right. So,
well, they were also looking. They were looking for the second coming, not the first, Jeff, and that's the problem. So, and nowadays they're looking at the first coming and not the second coming.
Yeah. With all the knowledge that I have, with all the knowledge that you have, you know what? We still don't know everything. And I'm willing to say that I may be off on some things. I know I'm probably off on some things because I don't know it all.
Right.
And when we get to a place where we think we don't want to listen to some other kind of viewpoint, and that's dangerous ground. That is real dangerous ground.
It's hard to move forward and grow if you're not willing to hear the other point of view. At the very least, to understand where they're coming from. That's one of the things I like to mention, because I like to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that are going on right now that I see in the body and outside the body that I think is absolutely nonsense. But I like to hear them out.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that there's not something that they're seeing that I'm not, and I'll take it back to the Father and stuff like that. But I want to see where they're coming from. I want to understand what it is they see.
Just being basic, like just with Torah, not Torah, and all this kind of stuff like this, guys. Listen, if you weren't open, I would have never come to the understanding of Torah. And wow, think about all the missed blessings that I would have had or not had if I had not been open to the nudging of the Holy Spirit that went just completely opposite. Man, I used to preach and teach, this lawlessness. Can we just say that? I used to preach and teach this.
No.
Because until the Father opened my eyes to it, and man, I repented. I got through with that, and it's a big deal. So, but you have to be open to correction. You have to be open to allowing the Spirit of God to come in and teach you all things, and you can't hold on to pet doctrines. I love how people that come into Torah, they say, "Oh, I've let go of everything." You really haven't. Gosh, people bring in all their pet doctrines, and just put them on a shelf and let God work on you with some stuff. Hey, Pharaoh is definitely starting to have his eyes open. Did we finish the chapter?
I think we did. I don't know. Did we not? There was a division between the people. Okay, so there came a grievous swarm of flies to the house of Pharaoh, his servants' houses, right? Great to small, all the land of Egypt, except for Goshen and anywhere the Israelites would have been. The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies, right? It says the land was corrupted, which makes me think about those sand flies. And, we're looking at insect bitings and flies and things like that. You got Harpocrates, the child of Horus, was supposed to be a part of that as well. Mm-hmm. Pestilence in general, Resher, right? So, and when we start looking at some of these plagues right here as pestilence, that should be ringing some bells in people's heads of verses about judgments and eschatology. Pestilence is big in end time stuff, right? Pestilence is big in how Yah deals with others and his own. Okay, so we need to keep that in mind as well when we start comparing Exodus to what is ahead of us and things like that. Okay, so then Pharaoh calls for Moshe and Aharon and says, "Go sacrifice to your Elohim already in the land," right? And Moshe says, "It's not meet for us to do so, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians." So we didn't go over this. "To the Yahovah our Elohim. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and they will not stone us?" Okay, so real quick, Pharaoh's telling Moshe and Aharon, sacrifice to your Elohim already. Sacrifice to your God. Just stay here. Just get it done and over with. Man, do your party now. We don't even care.
Yep.
You don't have flies, right? So you can deal with it. You have your little party without your flies, and then we'll be done with this already.
Yep.
And Moshe says, we can't do that because we're going to sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians. So Moshe already knows about the instructions of what's going to happen. So what is the abomination that he's referring to here, Jeff? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that they're going to be sacrificing some cows, and I think that's going against Hathor, different things like that. That's my thought. Some of those.
I think the cow as well. You also have Apis with the bull, and that's a big deity of Egypt, and that kind of hints at the next chapter. So it would be kind of fitting if that's what Moshe is referring to, considering that's the very next thing that comes up is the cattle. And you also have the lamb, but lambs aren't really considered. The sheep weren't considered an abomination. It's the shepherds are considered an abomination from what I can see. But it's an interesting possibility of connecting those as well. But I do think that like you said, it's cows and bulls. But I just thought I'd ask where you sit on that. But he's saying, can we do that in front of the Egyptians before their eyes? Will they not stone us? So this is something. Their golden calves are so golden in their eyes. Yeah, this is like India, right?
Yeah, if you go,
this is their holy cow.
Right. Yeah.
This is where you get the phrase "holy cow,"
holy
right?
Cow, yep.
Look. They will kill them on sight, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a for real deal. It's not just this. We have a temple of Prabhupada. I think I'm saying that correctly. Not too far, called the Palace of Gold. It's not too far from here. It's a Hindu temple up close to Moundsville where we're at. And man, is it they've got cows walking the grounds. They've got it's a for real deal. They have a restaurant there. Yeah, they've got a restaurant there. You better believe there's no cheeseburgers on sale.
No cheeseburgers. Oh
yeah.
Man.
Yep.
Okay, so Moshe says, we will go 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Yahovah our Elohim as he shall command us, as he tells us to do. We're gonna go about it his way, right?
Yeah.
And Pharaoh says, okay, I'll let you go that you may sacrifice to Yahovah your Elohim in the wilderness. Only ye shall not go very far away.
Yeah.
Entreat for me. Pray. Okay. We're going to try to,
He's negotiating a deal.
Yeah.
Meet me halfway here. The deal going on.
Yeah. Meet me halfway here. Yeah. You guys can go out. You can leave the land. Just don't go too far, right? I want to know that you're going to come back.
Yeah.
And Moshe said, behold, I go out from you and I will entreat Yahovah that the swarms of flies will depart from Pharaoh. And I'll entreat on that from his servants and the people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully anymore and not letting the people go to sacrifice to Yahovah. Moses knows. Moshe knows.
Yeah.
So Moshe went out from Pharaoh and he entreats Yahovah. He prays to him, right? And Yahovah did according to the word of Moshe, honoring his word, kind of like how Samuel, the words don't fall, right?
Yep.
And he removes the swarm of the flies, the swarm, right? Whatever it is, sand flies or regular flies, from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people. And there remained not one.
That's amazing.
This is like amazing. This is like one of those spooky moments. I don't know if you've ever had this. My wife and I have had this in moments, but you see it in movies, right? Where like there's all kinds of stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything stops.
Yeah.
It's like that calm before the storm where it's eerily calm.
Right.
Jeff, swarms of flies in your mouth, in your hair, in your ears, you've dealt with the frogs and the lice or the gnats, and now all of a sudden just, Jeff, at this point, Pharaoh's like, okay, whatever. And the rest of the Egyptians are like, where's the other shoe dropping?
Yeah,
they already know. They know it, Jeff. They're not hardening their hearts at this point, at least not some of them, right? And they're sitting there going, oh no, the calm before the storm. That's what I see. When it says not one, Jeff, come on now. All the flies are gone?
Not one remained.
All are gone, Jeff?
That's amazing.
And they didn't just drop dead. They just
gone.
That's freakier than the flies themselves, Jeff. It's like, no, bring them back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's one of the things that you and I'd like to do all the way through is put ourselves in those positions. And I think that's an awesome thing. Can you imagine? You've got, like you say, they're in your beard, they're in your eyebrows, they're in your ears, and then boom, they're just all of them gone. I don't have anything to really add to that. I think that would freak me the heck out.
Yeah, me too. My wife and I have had moments where they had like flocks of birds that are super loud and they're all swarming around one house and they're really loud and we're just like, whoa, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden they just all stopped.
Yeah.
And they went quiet. And it's like for a long period and then they just fly away. My wife and I were like, we're going to pray for that house. You know what I mean? We're like, oh, this is weird. And we've had some weird moments like that. Hey, before I end the night out, right? We got Pharaoh hardened his heart, right? And he refused to let the people go. Last verse. Okay, so we're done with those. And if you have more comments on 7 and 8, you can bring them up before we finish here. One more thing before we let it go. In the first video, remember I told you we had a comment about the midwives and the houses. And then yesterday I brought it up saying, I don't know what to make of it, but we acknowledged the question and that it wasn't as dismissive as what I wanted to make. I had a comment from a friend, and this was one of those comments where like it blew me out of the water because I didn't expect it from this individual. But this person said, hey, I looked into it, and didn't you think that this meant that Yah gave the midwives families? And I said, what? And he said, yeah. Look, he's like, what? You're thinking about houses, but the word house there also means family.
Family.
The midwives were helping the Israelites keep their family, so therefore Yah rewarded and blessed them with
what
families.
You sow, you also reap. Wow.
Right. And I said, oh my gosh, I had never thought of it. I'm not saying it's exactly that, but I think this person got it right on the head. I think they got that right on the head. And so I thought I'd voice that because I said I was going to, and then I forgot. So I thought that was really cool. That was one of those things where it's like, man, it would have been nice to have that in the live chat, But no, it's good. Right. The person got it to me, and we're able to mention that for anybody who's keeping up with the series. Maybe there'll be some others that'll appreciate that, like you and I. But dude, I'm out. I'm out on 6 pages of notes for tonight. We hit like pretty much every note I had.
Yeah.
So I'm good for the night. I'm tired. We're at 3.5 hours. Do you have any last statements? Any things that you want to mention?
No, man, I'm good. I think we've covered it all tonight. Yep.
Okay, for any new listeners or anything like that, we are doing a giveaway. I'm gonna try to start doing this at the end of the videos, Jeff, so they actually have to listen to the whole video.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm already suspecting a person of having listened to 2 minutes of a video and then made a comment so they can get free stuff. I mean, it is what it is, but the whole point was that if you take the journey with us and you enjoy the study. Yeah. We would like to give back and reward and things like that, not just free stuff. But anyhow, we're doing a giveaway, multiple giveaways at the end of this series. To be considered for the giveaways, we need you to comment under the videos what you enjoyed, what you liked, what you learned. Originally, I said that you had a comment under every video. I don't know if everybody's going to do that. So it's at this point, Jeff, where if we only have a couple people that comment under all the videos, comments that are things that they learned and enjoyed, then they're going to have top pick of the best stuff. And then everybody else is going to be considered for the other stuff. Yeah. Because if you stick through the whole journey, that gets extra points, in my opinion. Right. Yeah. And the only way I know if somebody stuck through the whole journey and enjoyed it and learned it and got something good from it is if they tell me in the comments. Yeah. Not live chat, but under the comments. Not to discredit the live chat, but this is what we're doing for the giveaway. So we have shirts and DVDs and books, and Jeff's got his book he's throwing in the ring, and we've got some other stuff. So, let us know what you enjoyed, what you learned. You can tell us your critiques and what you disagree with us as well. That's fine. But to get considered for this giveaway, you need to tell us what you liked, what you enjoyed, best out of the video, and what you learned from it. We need that. Okay. Anything else, Jeff, before we end it out?
Man, that's good. Just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video out. I think that's important. There's some really good information popped all the way through this, and wow, I don't remember ever going through a Sunday school class or a sermon and hearing what we're putting out there tonight. Very rarely. I mean, we're compressing, and I mean compressing a lot of information that both of us have studied on and learned throughout years of following Yah, and so I don't really.
Notes gleaned from so many sermons, and a lot of this stuff you'll hear a couple of these notes from one of our videos and different sermons, but to get all of it in one video,
one place is amazing.
I told the people that we were going to try to give it our all, and there's going to be some things at the end of the series, Jeff. You and I both know we're going to be like,
we're not going to hit it all.
We already left the genealogy. We're like, nope, we don't have time for it. So there's going to be some things that we're not giving it our all, but we are trying to give it our all, basically, for what we feel led to do. I mean, we're really trying to put it into it. So I'm not asking for a pat on the back or anything like that. All glory goes to Yah. I'm just saying, you know, for those who are enjoying it, please know we are putting in effort to do this. We are trying. This is not just us sitting down on the couch and saying whatever comes to mind kind of thing or what we remember. We are taking time to diligently study this out. We're looking at Greek. We're looking at Hebrew. We're trying to consider viewpoints that we disagree with. We're trying to look at multiple resources so we can point you into directions of other things, all with the encouragement of go to Yah and see what he tells you so you can, you know, spit the bones and chew the meat. Okay, that's all I've got, Jeff. Third time. Here's the Jew in me, Jeff. Third time. Any last closing statements you would like to put in?
I am good. I am good. I think that we've definitely covered a lot tonight. Amen.
Okay. I don't know if you catch the reference I'm catching there. I'm stating there, but I do feel that I need to ask 3 times. Okay. So for any who are new and those who are not, we appreciate you joining us in. We hope, we pray, and we pretty much expect. It's not just a hope and prayer. We expect that Yah is going to do what he does through us for those he has decided and planned to do. We both believe that we are told to do these things and guided to do these things. So we're not just hoping and praying. We are thankful that Yah is using these videos to help whoever it is he's using to help. We hope that is you, whoever is hearing this, you know, live and otherwise, that he's blessing you and guiding you in this walk and this journey. We hope that it strengthens your walk into maturity spiritually in your walk, so that not just for the glorification of God and for your walk with God, but also for you to help others and their walk with Yah, and so that they can glorify Yah, and that this can have this ripple effect of constantly, you know, and you can bring back, and we've got stuff from you guys from the feedback, so I'm loving it. All that to say, may Yah bless you and keep you according to his will. May he guide you. May his face shine upon you according to his will and bring you shalom. Thank you for joining us. This is Jeff Brandon of the Way Remnant and myself from the DNG 144 at Draw Night of the Creator Series here at Take on the World TV. Thank you and good night. Guys.
Honeni Elohim. Honeni Elohim.